Good afternoon. Pursuant to Chapter 551, Title 5 of the Texas Government Code, the Texas Open Meetings Act, notice is hereby given that the City Commission of the City of Brownsville, Texas, in accordance with Article 5, Section 12 of the Charter of said city, will convene a regular meeting on August the 6th, 2024 at 2 p.m. in the City Commission chambers located on the second floor of Brownsville City Hall, Old Federal Building located at 1001 East Elizabeth Street, Brownsville, Cameron County, Texas, 78520. So we do have members of the public comment who submitted a public comment form will be permitted to offer public comments as provided by the agenda and as permitted by the presiding officer during the meeting. A record of the meeting will be made and will be made available to the public in accordance with the Open Meetings Act. Mayor Pro Tem, it is now 2:02. You may now call the meeting to order. Thank you. Thank you. So for roll call, Mayor Pro Tem, we do have the mayor connected online. That's for the record. We do have a quorum. Thank you. The next item is invocation. We have Pastor Navarro, and we'll follow by Pledge of Allegiance.
Please respectfully ask you to stand up. Father in heaven, we come to you today, and we understand that we have a great privilege to come to you through your Son, Jesus Christ. And I ask you for a blessing upon this city. I ask you for a blessing upon the mayor, the commissioners. And it's been all the time my prayer, and I understand this, that these are your chosen people to lead the city of Brownsville. So we come to you, we place this agenda, this day, this beautiful city. We ask you for a blessing upon everyone here under this roof today. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Just to the flag, United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one indivisible. Next item are proclamations. Recognizing the Airport Department for National Aviation Day on August 19th.
Very good. A proclamation of the City Commission of Brownsville, Texas, recognizing August 19, 2024 as Aviation Day. Whereas the City Commission of Brownsville, Texas, recognizing aviation as a symbol of innovation, progress, and exploration, transforming the way we connect with one another and explore the world. And whereas the pioneers of aviation, from the Wright brothers' historic first flight to Amelia Earhart obtaining her commercial pilot's license in Brownsville, Texas in 1929, and becoming a trailblazing aviator, breaking barriers and setting numerous aviation records, to the groundbreaking advancements in aerospace technology, have paved the way for countless achievements and advancements in science, industry, and international cooperation. And whereas aviation continues to play a crucial role in global commerce, emergency response, and personal travel, contributing significantly to the economic and social development of our communities. And whereas Aviation Day serves as an opportunity to recognize and celebrate the contributions of aviation professionals at Brownsville South Padre Island International Airport and its tenants, with the dedication of the maintenance, operations, air traffic control, pilots, flight attendants, mechanics, and administration that keep Brownsville and the region connected to the world. And whereas Brownsville South Padre Island International Airport is a hub of innovation and economic growth, fostering opportunities for aeronautical development, attracting commercial air service and industries such as airplane, aerospace manufacturing, MROs, air cargo, and EV tolls, thereby creating jobs and enhancing the local economy. And whereas it is fitting that we honor this day to inspire future generations to pursue careers in aviation, foster a deeper appreciation for the complexities of air travel, and support ongoing advancements in aerospace technology. Now, therefore, we, the members of the City Commission of the City of Brownsville, Texas, hereby recognizing August 19, 2024 as Aviation Day, we call upon all citizens to join in celebrating the remarkable achievements in aviation, to acknowledge the significance of this vital industry, and to encourage the pursuit of excellence and innovation in the skies. Done this 6th day of August 2024, signed Mayor and City Commissioners, City of Brownsville, Texas.
On behalf of the airport staff, we are very appreciative of the recognition of Aviation Day. Obviously, we work very hard to keep the airport safe, secure, and operationally efficient. We are surrounded by a great team of people that keep the airport running every day. And we continue to represent Brownsville and South Padre Island in the industry and continue to attract new businesses to come to our area, including the airlines, which we always love when they announce a new flight, and hopefully we'll announce many more. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Next item.
The next item is proclamation recognizing Pastor Navarro.
A proclamation of the City Commission of Brownsville, Texas. The human efforts of Reverend Carlos A. Navarro. Whereas our community thrives thanks to the remarkable service of people who devote themselves to caring for others, offering support, and fostering positive change. And whereas Reverend Carlos A. Navarro, born in Guatemala and moved to the United States in 1982, and has since become an exemplary figure of humanitarian service and demonstrated a deep commitment to his calling. And whereas his establishment of various ministries, including a local food bank, nursing home ministry, outreach to the homeless, and support for migrant, exemplifies his broad commitment to service. And whereas amid the times of widespread tragedy, those reaching our borders in search for a better life encounter numerous hardships and require substantial support. And whereas Reverend Carlos A. Navarro has served in times of dire need by launching the Golan Ministry to assist the immigrant overflow, providing essential support to over 75 migrants with meals, clothing, and basic needs. And whereas Reverend Carlos A. Navarro has been instrumental in founding 25 churches in the Brownsville area, as well as 21 churches across Central America, South America, and Spain, significantly extending his impact and influence. And whereas Reverend Carlos A. Navarro's unflagging work and humble character have made him a beacon of hope and a source of inspiration for many, exemplifying high standards of humanitarianism and community service. Now, therefore, we, the members of the City Commission of the City of Brownsville, Texas, by virtue of the authority vested by the charter of said city, and on behalf of all of our citizens, do hereby honor and recognize Reverend Carlos A. Navarro for his outstanding hard work and contribution as a humanitarian, his dedication to serving his community in times of adversity, and his tireless commitment to be a blessing to others. We encourage all Brownsville citizens to join us in this recognition and to be inspired by his outstanding achievements and dedication done on this 6th day of August 2024. Congratulations.
Thank you, City of Brownsville. I made three choices, and I think it was the best three choices ever in my life. It's just to give my life to God and serve Him. The second best choice of my life is marrying my wife. She's not here, she's very ill. And the third choice is deciding to come to Brownsville and live here. Since I left Guatemala in 1982 and 42 years ago, and I decided to make Brownsville the place where I can spend the rest of my days and have my tomb here in Brownsville. It's been a blessing. I know so many people that I really thank from the bottom of my heart. And actually, the things that I do with joy, with respect, with dignity, and I do it with all my convictions. And it's because once I crossed the border, and I was one of them. So when I see migrants, I see myself in them and the other side. So God took me with his hand, and he's been blessed me a lot. And I can say truly and very honestly, I'm proud to be a citizen of Brownsville. Thank you all so very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Pastor, I just wanted to add to that. Thank you not only for your service to Brownsville, but for the region, because we know a lot of the people that benefit from the services that you and your congregation provide. It's beyond just Brownsville citizens day to day, and you and your wife remain in our prayers. Thank you.
Next item.
Next item, public comment period. As a friendly reminder, Section 2-26 F1 A through E and 2C 1 through 5, meetings and agendas. Speakers cannot be disruptive, abusive, profane, or act in a disorderly manner. Attendees should refrain from conversations while commission is in session. Use of cell phones, pagers, or any mechanical devices that may disrupt city commission proceedings are prohibited. Placards, banners, or signs are not permitted in the commission chambers, including various hats, caps, visors, and T-shirts, which may represent sentiments. Exhibits, displays, and visual aids used in connection with presentations to the City Commission are permitted. Only City Commission members and city staff may approach the dais. If report, letter, etc. is to be presented to the Commission, it should be given to the City Secretary or staff who will make the distribution. All comments shall be made to the Mayor and City Commission as a whole, Mayor Pro Tem, and not to individual commission members. Speakers may not engage in personal attacks, which include the conduct of the person being attacked that is totally unrelated to the manner in which he or she performs their official duties. The Mayor Pro Tem, we do have a total of 8 comments. 2 originally did not want to address the commission. 1 now would like to. So then there's a total of 7. Would you like to have a motion to suspend our rules of having the 5 speakers and have the 7 for this afternoon?
Also move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. The first speaker is Yolanda Spies.
Buenas tardes. Todos cometemos errores. No obstante, cuando la policía comete errores, nos impacta a los residentes de Brownsville de manera grave y duradera. Durante más de un año, He estado expresando mis inquietudes sobre la mala conducta y el abuso de poder por parte de la policía de Brownsville. Ahora, más residentes están hablando sobre sus inquietudes y estos errores están teniendo mal efecto en nuestra comunidad y ya no pueden ser ignorados. Lo que quiero señalar es que he comunicado cuál es el problema y qué serio está la situación. He proporcionado detalles específicos sobre problemas de conducta y he ofrecido sugerencias para mejorar. Solamente he recibido respuestas que se burlan de estos problemas. Decir que es inapropiado expresar estas preocupaciones es de por sí inapropiado. Si esta actitud prevalece en temas más serios, no es bueno para los residentes de Brownsville. Necesitamos que corregir estos errores para garantizar que nuestros residentes estén seguros, protegidos y legítimamente atendidos. Esto requiere una investigación exhaustiva de las prácticas policiales y una supervisión cercana de los oficiales involucrados. Tienen mi información de contacto y estoy comprometida a trabajar juntos para resolver estos problemas de forma constructiva. Es integral asegurar que nuestros oficiales, nuevos oficiales, estén bien capacitados y conscientes de sus responsabilidades. Si la ignorancia de la ley no es una excusa para los ciudadanos, entonces ciertamente no debería serlo para quienes están encargados de aplicarla. Nuestro objetivo debe ser de educar continuamente a nuestros oficiales para que conozcan plenamente las leyes que hacen cumplir. Debemos hacer que el proceso de presentar quejas sea más sencillo y menos estresante, sin temor a las represalias. Debemos enfrentar a la incompetencia y la negligencia antes de que causen más daño. Tener el poder de servir y proteger conlleva una gran responsabilidad. Es inaceptable no usarlo de manera efectiva. Brownsville merece algo mejor. Necesitamos que mantener los estándares de una comunidad justa y desarrollada. Esperamos que juntos podamos corregir estos errores y crear un entorno más seguro y justo para todos los residentes de Brownsville.
For the record, Mayor Pro Tem and Commissioners, because of today's start time, we did contact all of those who submitted public comment to remind them of the 2 p.m. start time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker, Hugo Yanez. Next is Sadie Maria Cuevas.
And guys, do we have a chair that we could bring over in case they need it? Thank you. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you. Name? Sadie. Sadie Maria Cuevas.
Carlos, move the mic closer to her so we can pick her up.
I'm sad because the dogs killed our chickens. I'm a good chicken mommy. Lay eggs. Catch the dogs and go to jail. So they can talk to the dogs. Thank you, and look at my picture. I'm an artist. Thank you so much. Bye.
Hi, thank you. Mom, would you like to summarize or repeat?
I'm sorry,
for her?
what?
Would you like to summarize or repeat? Because it's hard to hear up here.
Yes, of course. Thank you, Commissioners and Mayor Pro Tem. My daughter is 5 and she is a proud chickie mom to 9 baby chicks and a slew of other chickens. And there was a vicious pack of wild dogs that have been on the rise in our neighborhood, vicious dogs being loose, and we have lost over 16 chickens in a very short time. And just very recently, they tragically lost 9 of the babies. And so Sadie said she was very sad and wanted to tell the city that the dogs need to be caught with a net and go to jail.
Very good point.
So
Thank you
she-
very much for coming, Sadie.
She made the picture for you. Well, she won the state poster contest for rabies awareness. So she did that, but she put this together to show her notes for y'all. So thank
Thank
you for
you.
giving her the time. What do you say again?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, we have Ricardo Serna. Next is Mauricio Pina. Olivette Peña Fisher.
Good afternoon, Honorable Mayor and City Commission. My name's Olivette Peña Fisher, and I provided a copy of a more detailed letter that I emailed last week to each of you today. Please read that one at your convenience. I'd really appreciate it. My priority today is to express the need to proceed with your positive and affirmative support in updating an ordinance to continue the approval of off-premise billboard signs in Brownsville. Brownsville is home to amazing restaurants, venues, coffee shops, nightlife, and an international destination airport. Downtown revitalizations offer a unique taste of Deep South Texas. We are one of the greatest locations in the U.S. for tourism, taste, leisure, with attractions like our zoo, art museum, and SpaceX drawing thousands of visitors. I believe we all agree that we truly have the gem of the RGV. Today, I want to emphasize the importance of using digital billboards to promote our city's many resources. We can display our rich culture and share event details, helping to keep everyone informed. In addition, during emergencies, these billboards can be vital for sharing important safety messages with the community. I, unlike a big advertising firm, am planning to place our sign on our own land instead of leasing other property for sign space. This approach will allow us to sell and display ads for local businesses promoting our community and keeping money here in Brownsville. We will focus on providing affordable and flexible advertising solutions for small business owners, startups, and community organizations. I have already submitted the proper documentation for permits with TxDOT, and upon approval, my plan is to proceed with city permit requests. I'm deeply rooted here. I raised my family here, served on local boards, worked with students at BISD for 32 years. I'm a graduate of Leadership Brownsville Class 15 and proud of this community. Clearly, there's a need for outdoor billboard advertising, as I have already secured verbal commitments from at least 12 different local and out-of-area customers. Our local businesses are eager to have affordable options for advertising on billboards. By supporting an ordinance to continue off-premise billboards, you are promoting local economic growth. Again, ladies and gentlemen, there is a need. We locally just need to act upon this opportunity to continue promoting local economic growth. I thank you for your listening and your attention today. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Next is Diablo Velez.
My name is Diablo Velez. I am a homeless. And I use the Good Neighbor services. It's a nonprofit that provides service to local homes. Cameron County has been awarded $48,000 from the federal fund to be shared among the county nonprofits. It's a little bit of money, but nonetheless, I have no doubt that the good neighbor is going to be granted a portion of this money. However, I have a criminal complaint against this nonprofit. There are rules to receive services. Any violation of these rules means that you are out for 30 days, which can include no showers, no laundry, no clothing, no hygiene products, no use of the toilet, and no water and no food for 30 days. I'm not smart. I'm not intelligent. That's why I'm homeless. But just common sense, I can say that a man without water, he dies in 3 days. And he can last 1 week without food before he dies. Now you tells me, how in the hell the nonprofit have these criminal and barbarian laws? Please write it down because I'm making a criminal complaint. And if you members of the commission, the mayor, have anything to do with this organization, or you can use your power to make some changes, please do. Now, let's go to the showers, for example. They are with roaches, flies, mosquitoes. If you go there in a mosquito bite you, you ended up with sores, terrible rashes. It is unhealthy conditions that it makes the homeless sick. They have developed all kinds of skin diseases. I've been using this nonprofit for 8 months. Every morning is the same breakfast. Little bit of beans, scrambled eggs, whole tortillas, or bread. There is always coffee. This quote diet is making us sick.
Time.
I noticed that people have more time to talk.
Thank you. The next item is work session. Budget work session number 2 with City Commission fiscal year 2025, Financial Services Department.
Good afternoon, Honorable Mayor, Pro Tem, Commissioners. My name is Miguel Cavazos, the Budget Officer for the city, and I'll be presenting the second budget work session for fiscal year 25. A little overview of what we'll be going over. We'll be going over the 5-year forecast policy update, the fiscal year 24 unfunded items, the fiscal year 25 proposed budget highlights, compensation. Compensation will be presented by the OD and HR department. The fiscal year 25 proposed budget in details, I will cover the general fund, the internal service fund, and the special revenues.
We'd also like to thank the Budget Subcommittee for your input into the budgetary process. Thank you.
Yes, so back in April, we went ahead and met with the Budget Committee to go over the 5-year forecast policy. We went ahead and targeted the sales tax threshold general fund. So at that time, we had a threshold of 30% of total revenues will be from sales tax, which that means we have a very healthy sales tax. We're very conservative, so the revenues that we receive, we use it for, the excess revenues we receive, we use it for budget amendments, end of year amendments, and by updating the policy, we're able to budget upfront and use those funds for that. So the policy states the sales tax cap shall have a target of 37% of total revenues of general fund budget to directly address the city employees' centered focus for the implementation of the third phase of the compensation plan in fiscal year 25 and for operational needs. This is where we left off in fiscal year 24. These are the requests that were pending funding sources, so it was operating expenses, software requests, which we did address some of these through the mid-year budget amendment, compression issues, and some one-time expenditures. These are the proposed budget highlights for fiscal year '25. The employee focus, which we're proposing a 3% COLA, the minimum wage adjustment, longevity, and compression. In the next slide, Odie and HR will go more into detail on that. Collective bargaining agreement for the police department as well as fire is at 3.3%, a total of 1.8 million. The first responders fee replacement plan of 1.9 million. IT, the subscriptions have gone up, so it's a total of 1 million. And for the operational needs, we went ahead and funded 1.9 million.
So good afternoon, Mayor Pro Tem and Commissioners. My name is Perla Cepeda, ODNHR Director for the City of Brownsville. Can you hear me? So I want to start with what Ms. Helen mentioned. Thank you all for your support. I know we have the subcommittee, Commissioner Tino Villarreal, we have Commissioner Brian Martinez and Commissioner Linda Macias. But overall, the continued support that we are receiving for all the commissioners and the mayor as well. And this is a compensation roadmap for the non-civil service employees. And a little bit about this story. I just want to start telling you the phase one that we implemented in fiscal year '23, that was part of the initiation of the compensation analysis. So we did that compensation analysis implementation on October 2022. It was a phase one. We also included stipend based on the market gap included. We did an increase on the life insurance payout from $10,000 to $50,000. And for the first time, the city included longevity pay, which was a structure that offers $48 per year of service, and we cap it at 25 years of service, which is $1,200 for applicable employees. Then for phase two in fiscal year '24, on October 2023, what we did was the finalization on the compensation analysis gap, and then we'd also include a fixed stipend at the time. We did 3.5 COLA as well, and we continue with a longevity pay structure. So for the phase three, this is a fiscal year '25 proposals. We have 7 items, 7 components that we want to share with you all and about what is this proposal for the total compensation. So related with the salary, we have created a strategy that is very specific for those employees that have 7+ years with the organization. And this is acknowledging their significant contributions and dedication during their service to the city of Brownsville. Also, we have 482 employees that will be part of this proposal adjustment related to compression issues that we're having. Also, in that component for the salary, we have increased minimum wage. We currently have $10.97 per hour. So we have now 991 employees that are part of the proposed salary wage increase. And this proposal will apply both proposals on the salary for almost the 85% of our employees if this is something approved by commissioners. Then we also have another component, which is the COLA longevity pay. COLA, the recommendation is 3%, and continue with the longevity pay as a permanent benefit or compensation package for the next fiscal years. We have under benefits, the vision plan, and the proposal on that, it's for employees only, and this is for full-time employees. This benefit include not only for civil service employees, but also for non-civil service employees. It's for both. So also we are including here something that we did a lot of research, that is the paid parental leave. We review with different cities, and we noticed that, for example, San Antonio, Austin, the largest cities, they provide that benefit. And we noticed that this can be really a proposal that allows parents to time bond with of course, the new the newborn, foster, or adopted child. This is a benefit that is going to apply for the full-time employees. We include here for all employees that are pet lovers, a pet insurance proposal. And this is a supplemental opportunity that I believe is really good and excellent and affordable care for the loved pets. So it's an additional component. Under benefits, but very specifically on the leave, we are recommending to add 2 additional holidays. Just to let you know, the city currently observes 12 holidays, and the proposals is Christmas Eve and Columbus Day, Indigenous Day. We did actually a survey with the city employees to understand more about what is the responses, and 60% they prefer to have Columbus Day, the 40% prefer the June 19. Also on their leave and the benefits, we are recommending for additional annual leave. That means that we recommend 5 additional days based on the years of service. We have it on the policy, so that is going to be part of the recommendation as well.
So I think this whole proposal, as you say, it's robust because of many things. One, government's having a hard time hiring across the nation, and we have to maintain competitive with our area and just in general. Also, last year's COLA was the first time since I think 2014 that we had a COLA. So and also, so we want to continue that and also make longevity pay, which was the first time we had offered that 2 years ago to get permanent. So if you have more years of service, you would be compensated more for that. So some of these is from surveys that we've done internally from employees, and then just also, just trying to keep that competitive edge. We have already lost employees to an LNG, and we're seeing that. It's impacting our engineering and public works department, which is one of our larger departments. So those are the types of things that we're trying to think of to keep competitive. Also, in the last year's budget, we did state that as part of the roadmap that we would need to address compression, because as you increase the minimum wage, we increased the minimum wage last year as well. As we increase the minimum wage, newer employees get to a certain range, but then that also, compresses against existing employees that have been here longer. So the compression is to help that middle where it says, hey, you just hired someone and they're almost at the same pay that I am, and I've been here 7 years. So those are the types of compression things that we're also trying to work through. Thank you.
So just to give you like an estimate proposal of the different components, and what Ms. Helen said is it's not only for attraction, but also for retention for those employees that are with us since more than 7 years with the organization, for the new ones that are coming in the organization as well. What other things that we can offer, not only in the salary, but also for the benefits. So for compression, we have 85% of our employees between compression and minimum wage that are going to be really positively impacted. For COLA, this is for employees, non-civil service employees, and it's applicable for 100 of our employees. The vision plan is one of the benefits that is for civil service and non-civil service employees as well. So holiday, annual leave impact, of course, 100% of our non-civil service employees. The parental leave, of course, for those that wants to have that benefit and qualify for that. And again, I believe this is part of the strategy that we are creating, and we really appreciate all the support that we are receiving, not only for the employees on the benefits, compensation, also for the development that you allow to for the employees. And this is part of the continued learning and a lot of benchmark and a lot of understanding the needs of the employees of the city of Brownsville and be competitive, of course, for them and provide the best for them as well. So I don't know if you have any questions, so continue.
Any questions?
I did have one quick question, Perla, and for the budget committee. I recall in our conversations for the holiday, we were entertaining Juneteenth.
Yes. So yes, sir. So what we did is because Juneteenth was brought up, and also after that Columbus Day / Indigenous Days was brought up, and we could afford one. So we went back to the employees and we surveyed them, and they came back that 60% preferred, at this time, Columbus Day / Indigenous Day. Hopefully in the future, we can add Juneteenth, but we let them choose rather than us choose.
I like that.
For them.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I also want to say that one of the things we're actively negotiating is our own clinic. We had historically talked about our own clinic. We're there. I think Frontier is a good, we're looking at clinics, and so having our own clinic for our own employees, so they can go. So at zero copay. So that's something we're in active negotiations with them right now to finalize that.
With who? You're in active negotiations
So
with
there's,
who?
so we have two.
I'm sorry?
possibly.
With Frontier, we have the conversations. I think we have a
Yes, yes.
presentation.
Mhm.
So what we are doing right now is do the analysis of the information, review the location, see what is the services and what is going to be the scope. So we are having those conversations.
Okay.
Any additional questions?
Any other questions from the commission?
Just a comment, and I appreciate all the work that's gone into this by both the members of the commission who've sat on the committees and staff. One of the things I do want us to look at, and of course, I know we're always limited by the resources available, and I know this is something we're all aware of, but making sure we remain competitive when it comes to salaries, because I think we've seen, especially in higher end positions, and our veterinarian is a prime example, where I really think our salary range for positions like that are not anywhere near competitive. But it's something that, especially considering public comment tonight and knowing the meetings that we've had as commissioners with members of the community, with a major concern in the community with stray animals, having a full-time veterinarian on staff is going to be very, very important for the future of the city. But again, ensuring that we offer a salary that's competitive enough to retain someone is where we start. And it's not just the vet position, it's going to be several positions. I just want to make sure we continue to work on that as much as we can. But thank you guys for everything you're doing in that.
No, I think you, sir. You brought up a good point. We went through an important negotiation for a vet and a vet tech. And we had to go to the top of the salary range. I think one of the things that we need to work on is also, we did kind of a compensation analysis a while back, but I think directors also, we kind of need to look at that as well. Or not even directors, specialized like veterinarians or something that are like doctors and have certain liability that comes with that. We actually paid for some of their liability insurance. So we're trying to be as flexible as possible. Like we have an entomologist, right? That we were paid for with a grant. And so that grant is going to go away. So now we're having to pick up, that 1.9 in operational. It's not a lot of money.
Yeah.
If you really think about it. We're looking at procurement director. We had talked about, we really need that department. So that's a big chunk of the 1.9. And then so we'll give you a list of positions, but we are limited with what we have. But thank you for that comment. We're actively looking at that. We just really wanted to address really compression. I think that's something that's been on our radar, and we've been doing it on a case by case, but it's good to have it organization-wide versus on a case-by-case basis.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Carlos, Commissioner Macias is having trouble logging in. Can you communicate with her? Text?
This is the fiscal year 25 proposed budget. More into details. This is the fourth consecutive year of a reduction in our tax rate. It's a 7% decrease. This goes hand in hand with the Senate Bill 2, which allows us to budget 3.5% in revenues. This is a graph of our sales tax revenue throughout the fiscal years. As you can see, we're projected to have a $44.5 million by the end of this fiscal year. And as you'll see in the next slide, the way we used to budget compared to how we're proposing to budget this year. So that being said, our property tax has increased. Our proposed budget for property tax is 1.3 million, which is the 3.5%. And our sales tax, we just projected a $44 million fiscal year 24 ending, and we are budgeting 42 million, which is still conservative, but it's a little bit less conservative than last year, all because we updated the 5-year forecast policy. Our fees and services are doing fairly well, really well, actually, in regards to the ambulance fees. Our collections are coming in. So overall, we have $11 million of new revenues. And a little comparison of last year's general fund revenue source to this year's. As you can see, our sales tax, even though the cap is at 37%, we're at 32%. Our property tax is at about 29%. Other revenue sources about 19%, and our transfer ins are at 19%. Our fiscal year 25 proposed general fund expenses. Overall, it's an $11 million increase. It matches our revenues, which is a proposed balanced budget. Like we mentioned, our top priorities were personnel regarding the compensation package, as well as our collective bargaining agreements. So you see an increase of $4 million and $4 million in personnel. And our maintenance and miscellaneous services, this is our professional services accounts, as well as our dues and memberships that increased. It's part of the 1.9 operational needs throughout the departments. Our internal service, which consists of our fleet department, as well as our IT department, increased as well. And our transfer outs, it's an increase of 3.3 million. We'll go into more details in the next slides. This is another chart for our general fund expenses. We have 52.4% of public safety, 23.7% of general government, 8.6% of culture and recreation, 6.3% of public works, and transfers to other funds, 6.5%, and our public health is about 2.5%. A comparison from fiscal year to 24 to fiscal year 25. Our fiscal year 25 salaries and benefits is the majority of our budget, and it's at 67.4%. Decreased a little bit from last year in regards to other items being funded. Remember, there's a total of 11 million of new revenues and new expenses. Brought that down to 67.4. These are fiscal year 25 general fund transfers. Our transfers in are from Brownsville, PUB, landfill, and the bridge fund. Total of 22.3 million. And our transfer out, we'll have 1.4 million to airport in regards to they no longer will be receiving operational grants to be funded. The public transit, about 4.8 million. Sports park, 469,000. The golf center, about 585,000. The event center for 590,000. The tiers fund for 380,000, and the motor vehicle for 331, which is a total of 8.6 million. More into details, our fiscal year 25 enterprise proposed budget revenues. As you can see, we're increasing 487,000 in the airport. Our bridge fund, 960,000. Our public transit, increase of 2.5. I know this goes hand in hand with the fees that are being proposed as well. I want to mention that in Sports Park, the city does a 441,500 transfer, but we do get a contribution from BCIC for operational needs. And these are the expenses. Increase in a total of $1 million in airport, increase in public transit, and the landfill went ahead and increased to 1.1 million. That increase pretty much offsets with the landfill's revenues. These are our internal service funds that are pretty much funded through our general fund. We have our fleet and facility service fund, which increased by 3 million. This is pretty much the fleet plan for the first responders and some operational needs. And for IT, that 1 million we mentioned earlier in regards to software subscriptions. These are our special revenue funds. We have our convention and tourism, proposing a $2 million revenue, and our street and drainage fund, which is a 3.9 million revenue. August 20th, I know the director for Convention Visitor Bureau is going to come and present and elaborate more on that topic. These are some key dates. Right now, we're on budget work session number 2 on August 6th. Next meeting will be the first public hearing for the budget, as well as the ad valorem property tax, and then followed by the second reading to adopt the budget and the tax rate by ordinance, and the start of the new fiscal year, October 1st. Have any questions?
Questions from the commission? I want to thank you again for making the presentation so easy to understand. Back in the day, they were very hard to understand, so keep going. It's great. Thank you very much for your work.
Thank you.
Just have a quick comment. Thank you for the presentation again. My comment is regarding the sales tax threshold. I think this is a great thing we did this year, increasing it from 30 to 37%. And just to give a little more perspective to the public, that doesn't mean we're going to spend up to 30% of sales tax. It just means that we don't have to come back and do a budget amendment. If we do have a sales tax surplus, we can go out there and have the ability to spend the money. So I think we are still conservative in the fact, but this policy change really will help with the continuing increase in our sales tax.
And that's absolutely right. This year we've had to do 2 budget amendments. We just did one, and then we're going to do one another before the end of the fiscal year. And that allows us to just do one. And that's more work, more time. And really, we need the money up front, right? And I think we've been conservative enough to prove, as you can see, our sales tax is outpacing property tax. The property tax is also capped by Senate Bill 2. So those are the things that we're taking into consideration when we budget. But thank you so much, our finance department, for all the great work, budget department, that you're doing. We still have a road to go. I know we're going to tackle hotel occupancy tax in the next meeting, but those are the things that we really appreciate staff working long hours and OD and HR and to get this done. So thank you. We're almost there.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. For the record, may we note that Commissioner Macias is online?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem.
Next item.
Next, consent agenda items.
Motion to approve?
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve 1 through 11 and 13 through 16.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So number 12 is consideration and action to approve an agreement with CTM Professional Services, Inc. for museum consulting services in the amount not to exceed $107,500 as budgeted, and authorize the city manager to sign the agreement. City Manager's Office.
So on this item, my major concern is I see references to the Brownsville Historical Association, and more specifically to the collections owned by the Brownsville Historical Association. And I know there's some concern by the association that references to things that they own are being included in this contract, but they don't feel like they've been involved in the process.
Okay, primarily, the person that we're hiring is coming in to do a comprehensive look at everything that Brownsville has to offer museum-wise.
Mm-hmm.
They're not here to make any recommendations about anybody's assets or anything like that. It's going to be, how do we approach our museums in terms of making sure they're marketed in a way that's comprehensive, that there is a methodology or an understanding of what the city wants to, how the city wants to partner with the various museums and how they can interact with each other. This originally was in the downtown planning area, and our planner was at home learning how to change diapers. So I took over in the middle of it, looked at the evaluations, and this is the consultant we ended up. We can certainly alter that scope of work in any way that would make the commission and BHA feel comfortable, and we're happy to talk about that. The person we're hiring is very open to having lots of community engagement and lots of discussion, and is coming in with a completely open mind and doesn't have any preconceived notions about Brownsville museums or anything. I think the intent was to make sure nobody got excluded.
And I like that, and I'm satisfied with that. I think I would encourage that any passage of this be subject to a sit down with BHA or any other organization that's referenced, just to make sure we're all on the same page. I don't think they'd be opposed to guidance or suggestions, but I think they don't want to be in a position where something happens or recommendation is made out of this plan or this contract, and then suddenly things like their funding are tied to these recommendations.
No,
Yeah,
that's
I
not-
think we're going to your point, Commissioner, so because we have a lot of needs right now. We have the San Fernando, and in fact, we have a transition with BHE on on our Market Square, and we have a lot going on. So I think we would just substitute language to saying that we were going to work in collaboration with all the museums and not specify who. And that way we just do that and nobody feels like, oh, I'm being singled out or I mean, we have the list of museums or all, even children's museums. And so just kind of make it all encompassing versus the specific museum. So we can do that, or else, you know, I think that would be my recommendation.
Yeah, I think if you look at her timeline, she's going to come down and do some reconnaissance on her own, but following up with that is meeting with all the stakeholders individually. So that's definitely the intent is what are your needs? What is your operation like? How do you think you can be helped through collaboration and partnerships with all the different museums and organizations in the city?
Thank you. Any other comments or questions about this item? In that case, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve.
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. The next item.
Next, public hearings. Public
there-
hearing,
I'm sorry, was there another item that you
Nope,
included?
it was just the
It
one.
was just the one. Okay, go ahead.
thank you. Public hearing number 1, public hearing and action on first reading on ordinance number 2024-748-H to amend Chapter 98, Traffic and Vehicles, Article 4, Speed Restrictions, establishing speed limits at FM 511 Dockberry Road and South Dakota Avenue in the city of Brownsville and dealing with related matters, engineering and public works.
Mayor Pro Tem and Commissioners, good afternoon. This item is to authorize the reduction of speed limits along FM 511, also known as Dockberry. This item is to authorize the reduction of speed limits along FM 511, also known as Dockberry Road, from 45 to 30 miles an hour, and South Dakota Avenue from 30 to 25 miles an hour in front of Idea Frontier School. Staff recommends approval. Any questions? Yes, any questions?
Your microphone, Mayor.
This is the public hearing. Are there any folks out there to comment?
I'll move to close the public hearing.
Is there a second?
Second.
Yes. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Again, any questions from the commission?
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Public hearing number 2, public hearing and action on first reading on ordinance number 2024-1734A, amending Chapter 14 Aviation, Article 4 Rates and Charges, Section 14-125 Landing Fees, and amending ordinance number 2023-1673B, the master fee schedule of the city of Brownsville, Texas, to amend the luggage cart rental rates and parking rates for the Brownsville South Padre Island International Airport and dealing with related matters, Airport Department.
Good afternoon again, Mayor and Commissioners. Basically, we are trying to fix some language issues that we have with the prior ordinance passing. The first one is the landing fee ordinance. In the initial ordinance, we had tiers of fees for each of the landing weights for aircraft. In the revised one that passed earlier this year before I joined the airport, has some contradicting language, basically collecting fees only on commercial aircraft, but we do have more than that. We have general aviation and corporate aircraft and land. We need to collect fees on that. So this corrects that. Also, it defines the method of determining their weight. So I think that's very important for the collection of it. So, and that's basically what this first part of the landing fee correction is for the ordinance. The second one is the parking fees. This one is just a correction to the monthly long-term. Here you can see we're deleting this section here of 150 and 125. Basically, we do not discount public parking. The intent of that fee was really for reserve parking. And we only have those to some pre-negotiated parking spaces at the airport. So that defines it at, to $150 reserved parking. Also, you'll see in there that we have added the U.S. veterans up to 7 days free to thank our military for their service. And the last one here is the luggage car rental. Basically, currently we're charging $1 with a 50-cent return. And then the initial cost of the equipment was about $50,000. Once we take out the credit card fees, we're collecting about 40 cents per cart. Once we do the amount of rentals, we are collecting about $143 a year. So it will take a very long time to recoup that investment. So we have compared our the luggage cart rentals to the top 10 airports and some other airports that I called and asked for their rentals. So you see varies mostly from $5 up to $9 to $10. So we're trying to set the fee to more appropriate and competitive fee of $3 with a return of 50 cents. We won't have an issue with returning the luggage carts. We receive less than one rental a day. So hopefully this will try to recoup the initial investment and hopefully at one point or another recoup the investment. Obviously, the justification is just financial sustainability and we basically have a dynamic fee structure that we can actually recoup some of the assets that we have invested in the airport.
Angel, first and foremost, thank you guys for the consideration for veterans. I think that's an excellent addition. And it sounds like you guys are doing your due diligence in making sure that we remain competitive in everything we're looking at adopting. My only question would be, did this go before the advisory committee and do they recommend these as well?
So the landing fee, it passed last time and it did get presented. The parking fee as well passed prior to me joining the airport. It's just corrections. The luggage cart, I believe the discussion was had before I joined the airport in January timeframe. So we're using that same discussion, except this time we're just adjusting.
Very good, thank you.
I move to approve.
It's a public hearing, I believe.
This is a public hearing. Are there any public comments?
Move to close public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We have a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passes.
Public hearing number 3, public hearing and action on ordinance number 235-2024-021-S to request a specific use permit in a traditional neighborhood corridor TN-C zoning designation to allow a used car lot for lots 9, 10, 15, and 16, block 65, Hardin's addition to the city of Brownsville, Cameron County, Texas, located at 1320 Expressway 77, Brownsville, Texas 78520, as shown in Exhibit A, District 1, Planning and Redevelopment Department.
Good afternoon, Mayor Pro Tem, Mayor and Commissioners. My name is Eduardo Garrido. I'm here representing the Planning and Redevelopment Department. As mentioned, this is a request to rezone from traditional neighborhood corridor to traditional neighborhood corridor with a specific use to be able to operate a used car lot. The property is located at 1320 Expressway 77 between 13th Street and 14th Street. There were 21 notices mailed out to surrounding properties. However, none were returned in favor or in opposition. The Planning and Zoning Board recommended approval for this case. This is a public hearing. I'm available for questions.
I have a question. On the, what is this called? The staff report, it says, staff recommends denial of the special use permit to allow used car lot based on observations from the Planning and Development Department. Can
That
you
is correct.
elaborate on that?
Staff does not recommend the request.
Why?
So the used car lot will not fit well with traditional neighborhood corridor, being that it's focused on residential and light commercial uses. Additionally, it will increase traffic in the area along the alley as well as noise.
Are there conditions in place like other requests for like masonry walls and for them to keep them off the street?
In the event the commission decides to approve this request, staff does recommend the conditions for organized parking, vegetation buffers, as well as a masonry wall.
And I only ask this because other car lots along that same area have the tendency of parking vehicles under the expressway, they are prohibited. And even when we go out there and enforce, they continue to do so. So when we have these kinds of businesses outside of residential areas, it impacts on that residential area itself. I don't feel very comfortable being able to move forward with this, especially with the denial, without the recommendation of the city, because it doesn't align with our plans.
This is a public hearing. Are there any public comments?
I'll move to close the public.
No, there is a public comment. Welcome. Please state your name.
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you very much. My name is Vicente Robles. I'm actually the owner of said property. Thank you very much for your time. I'm actually here to discuss as well, hoping to get approved for the specific use permit of the land in question to put a car lot in place. I'm a businessman. I have several other car lots, fairly close as well to the said property, on Lincoln Street, as well as on the other side of the expressway on frontage. I understand and I hear your concerns, Mr. Martinez, in regards to the parking under the overpass and things like such. I do want to reassure you all, though, that within my business line of work, we've never had that issue before. I'm very strict on my renters. This property in particular, I want to keep for myself and run it for myself as well. So I'm willing to abide by whatever the city recommends, as well as whatever type of requirements or recommendations that the city planning and zoning is asking for me to do, like with the masonry wall and things like such. And I'm also here to answer any questions. As well, I wanted to state that right next to my lot, the old Brownsville Coffee Shop #1, that building is still there and present. And on the other side, there is a home. But to my understanding, because I check on the property quite often, it seems abandoned because several weeks ago, or even last month when I came for the planning and zoning meeting, there was a dog on the residential side, or on that little house. But several weeks prior to that, we found it dead due to not being fed or given water or something. I had to call the city to come and inspect and, take the body out and things like that. And we haven't seen anybody come to that house in months. So I feel that our use of having a car lot there won't be an obstruction to the residential, or possibly causing any type of traffic disruption whatsoever. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other public comments?
There are none, Mayor. I'll move to close.
All in favor?
Aye.
Are there any comments besides Commissioner Martinez?
I would just comment, I support this. I think everything else we see in that area, and I think that's why planning and zoning did this, is already headed in that direction. We've got what used to be a restaurant on the corner. We've got several car lots up and down this stretch, so that it's one more place for someone to shop in that same stretch, rather than bringing people to a new area for a car lot. I don't think it would have a negative impact on this area of the city. I think the suggested requirements from the Planning and Redevelopment Department are appropriate, so I'd be inclined to support it with those. But I'm open to any comments that any of my peers have.
Now, and I'll share another concern I also have. Well, not a concern, but just looking ahead, I know that we recently won a grant for our Buena Vida development. They're on 13th Street, 14th Street, which is the same vicinity. And what we don't want is that there's going to be a beautiful redesigned area, And when we think about, quality of life for those residents there, we want to be able to have grocery stores or other type of retail stores that complement their living right there. A lot of these people living in housing, they don't have vehicles. They depend on public transportation. And so when we think about the future planning of these areas, that's my reservation. I stand by what the commission wants to do with this, but these are just some of the things that I was thinking about moving forward in that area that's continuing to develop for housing. We want to be able to complement as many businesses as you can for them. But they are going to follow all the rules, so we can't restrict them.
I have a quick question for you. What was the P and Z board? Usually you guys, if staff says we don't recommend, right? And then they come back and say, we do.
So the P and Z's role is to take all information, whether it's from the applicant or the public or the staff, and formulate their own recommendation, and then we bring that forward to you as the official recommendation. Initially, the staff, when we looked at the surrounding area, we saw the recent activity. The city has opened an employee health clinic, fantastic place, and there's a couple of historic buildings that a private property owner has recently made some investments in, and we see some preservation activity. And of course, we were also aware about the significant award to the Housing Authority recently and what impact that'll have in bringing the surrounding area back. And so the staff did recommend denial to the Planning and Zoning Commission, but it's just a recommendation.
No, I agree. I'm saying, were you part of that meeting? Did they, what was their
Feedback.
How did they end up recommending approval?
The board chair did raise concerns regarding the used car lot.
Not a lot of feedback.
Okay. Fair enough. Thank you.
If there are no other comments, I'll move to approve.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Just to confirm, we would like to hold a roll call.
I think it was the mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, myself, and Commissioner Cardenas that voted in the affirmative.
Do you want me to start? Aye.
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 Commissioner Villarreal,
Nay.
Nay.
Commissioner Martinez. We have Mayor Cowan and Commissioner Macias. Mayor Cowan?
Aye.
Can you hear me? Thank you.
Aye.
Commissioner Macias?
Aye.
Thank you.
Motion passes. Next item.
Public hearing number 4. Public hearing and action on ordinance number 235-2024-022 to rezone from residential single-family R1, residential transition R3, and commercial corridor CC to residential transition R3 to allow a townhome development for 49.829 acres, being all of lots 15, 16, and 17, and out of lots 12, 13, and 14, Las Lagunas subdivision, reserve areas A and B, 0.285 acre out of Plaza Boulevard, and Lot 1, Block 1, North Paredes Business Plaza, Cameron County, Texas, located at Dr. Hugh Emerson Road, Brownsville, Texas 78526, as shown in Exhibit A, District 3.
Yeah, for the record, my name is Eduardo Garrido with the Planning Department. This is a request to rezone from residential single-family R1 and commercial corridor CC to residential transition R3 to establish a townhome development. The location is at the southeast corner of the intersection with Dr. Hugh Emerson and Paredes Line Road. There were 57 notices mailed out to surrounding properties. However, none were returned in favor or in opposition. The Planning and Zoning Board recommended approval for this case. This is a public hearing. I'm available for questions.
This is a public hearing. Are there any public comments?
I'll move to close the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I do have one question. For something like this, especially when we're along a waterway, and I know waterways are something that we've been taking a particular interest in, do we look at any type of environmental impact when this is going to be some type of development along a body of water, along a resaca, especially if that body might be used as part of our drainage system or water supply system?
So we do have a Public Works representative to answer the question.
Can you go back to the picture overhead so we can see that again?
I would go, but there,
Thank you.
that works.
As part of our, well, good afternoon, Mayor Commissioners. I'm Doro Garcia. As part of our requirements for stormwater requirements, they're required to filter the water before it goes into the waterways themselves. In addition to that, we typically on waterways that are maintained by PUB will take a maintenance, a 25-foot easement for resaca maintenance and transportation easement. So those are the only two things that I'm aware of that we do for water quality, all our subdivisions that are on waterways.
Thank you.
On that same topic, Dodo, if I may ask, have we started on this project?
No.
And I'm only asking because a resident reached out about a day or two ago. They just sent some pictures of work being done already out there where they're moving branches and clearing out things. If it hasn't been approved yet.
Probably property preparation, however, a plat application hasn't been submitted.
So they have been doing some clearing for survey work so that they can be able to begin their design work.
Thank you.
Hey, any other comments? Entertain a motion?
I'll move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Any that do not approve? No. Motion passes. Thank you. Next item?
Next item, public hearing number 5. Public hearing and action on ordinance number 235-2024-023 to rezone from residential estate RE to light industrial LI to allow warehousing and logistics for the east 5 acres of the southwest, 15 acres of the west, 35.35 acres in Lot 4, Block 109, El Jardín re-subdivision, Share 29, Espiritu Santo Grant, Cameron County, Texas, located at 5871 Boca Chica Boulevard, Brownsville, Texas, 78521, as shown in Exhibit A, District 2 Planning and Redevelopment Department.
For the record, my name is Eduardo Garrido. This is a request to rezone from residential state to light industrial to operate a warehousing and logistics facility. The property is located at 5871 Boca Chica Boulevard and is right across the airport. There were 14 notices mailed out to surrounding properties. However, none were returned in favor or in opposition. Staff, Planning and Zoning Board recommended approval for this case. This is a public hearing.
This is a public hearing. Are there any public comments?
Move to close.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any comments among the commission?
To approve.
I'll move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Public hearing number 6, public hearing and action on first reading on ordinance number 2024-1751, amending Chapter 40 Elections of the Code of Ordinances to adopt Article 3 Electioneering to provide reasonable time, place, and manner regulations. Office of the City Attorney.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Commission. Normally it's good evening, but today it's good afternoon. So with the November election around the corner, staff brought this electioneering ordinance forward. Just for the general public, and electioneering is essentially advocating for or against an candidate for office or a measure. Within 100 feet polling location, that is an area where you cannot do or conduct electioneering. The election official at each polling location is the one that polices that anything outside that 100 feet is pretty much open for game. And we have received complaints from citizens, from library staff, and from elected officials for some of the activity that has occurred at the polling locations that the city owns, generally the public libraries. And so state law does allow a city to adopt reasonable time, place, and manner restrictions for electioneering. Next slide. And so before you, we have proposed a electioneering ordinance that does regulate the certain conduct or activities. And so no election materials on city property 24 hours before an election period begins and after it ends. No sign shall exceed 4 square feet or exceed 4 feet in height, including any supporting poles. Those supporting poles themselves can't go beyond 6 inches into the ground. We, of course, don't want any signs affixed to another sign or any structures like a utility pole or a traffic stop sign. Already within our UDC, no signs are allowed within the public right-of-way, but we have established further limits to include 10 feet from the public roadway that's adjacent to the property, 2 feet from sidewalks or emergency access areas, ramps, those kind of safety measures, and also any area that obstructs vision for traffic. As you can see from this little political cartoon, you have signs littering the right-of-way of the highway. And so what we want to avoid is where the signs themselves will become a traffic nuisance or a safety hazard. We are also asking that the signs include contact information for the person who is responsible for the signs. That way, if there's an issue, we can always contact them first, right? Contacting them, working with them, and educating them is actually the first step in any kind of enforcement action. Next slide. Including with electioneering, we don't want it to interfere with disability access or emergency response to the property. And so we have put in regulations to as far as canopies, right? We're in South Texas, so it gets really hot. There's volunteers that are out there usually. And so we would have staff indicate where they're able to put canopies, right, as a central location for that political candidate. That way they have some kind of shade. And here's an example of what one city has done where they have this is a parking spot. And so they have designated areas. It's first come, first served. You can't locate it an hour before the polling location starts, and you have to remove it an hour after. Canopies and chairs should not impede the flow of traffic or foot traffic. While we want to not infringe on the democratic process, we also want to make it safe and not chaotic for the public. Next slide. Included with that, in the past, we have had issues with trailers or large trucks that have campaign signs on them. And they've been parked in parking lots within the city, usually taking up 1 or 2 spots, as well as food trucks. And so we have added some regulations indicating that that is not that's prohibited within the city properties, including, of course, with the exception of canopies, other types of booths, barbecue pits of any kind, food trucks, and just generally the distribution of food from a city property, whether they consume it on or off the city property, right? We also are restricting electioneering representatives from approaching moving vehicles. That's a hazard both for themselves and for the general public. And then at state law, there is a prohibition of having loudspeakers, microphones, megaphones. And so we have essentially codified that within our ordinance so that we can also police it. Because usually that's something that the election official can do, but this will now allow our staff to be able to police that as well. Next slide. And so enforcement. The proposed enforcement would be done by the city secretary and or designee library services director, since they are the ones where the election polling locations are located, co-compliance officer, or a law enforcement official. In the past, the city secretary's office has received emails from concerned citizens or other elected officials regarding the electioneering activity. And a lot of the times, the city secretary's office has checked with us. There's really nothing to certain circumstances. But then we reach out to the election administrator for the county, and there's certain things that they can and can't do as well. Since education is important, of course, we would keep copies of the ordinance at each polling location to remind those involved in the election process that these are the rules that the city has. With regard to when it's actually time to enforce, if there is a public health aspect of it, the violations can be high as 2,000. If there are violations that are all others that are not public health or sanitation related, those violations would be $500, right? And that's the maximum. Window fines are set by the court, so the window fine could be $250. So it just depends on what the window fines are for the court. Each hour a violation occurs would be considered a separate violation. And as you can imagine, these types of activities, they're not something that's run, all day. They're usually just during the voting location, during the voting period, which is usually 7 to 5. And so it's a short window for violations to occur. So we have it, each hour that it continues is a separate violation. The city is also empowered under the ordinance to be able to remove those items and dispose of them should we find that they're in violation and they're not picked up, right? I think at the last election, not only did we have food trucks that were an issue, but we also had some people leaving behind canopies the night, like overnight. And so, we instructed the library services director, yes, you may remove those. They shouldn't be out there. It's city property. Next slide. And so with the November elections coming up, and of course, our own election coming up in May, this would only regulate the polling locations that we have at the city, which is Central Library and Southwest Library, or any other location that we decide to open up to the public. This does not affect other polling locations. We have no control over that. And so I'll entertain any questions.
I have a couple of questions. The roadside, you said, let's say that I have a truck with a big sign on the side of the truck, and I'm not allowed in the parking lot of the library, but am I allowed to park on the curb outside the parking lot if that is a public roadway?
So like on another property where it's adjacent?
On the road itself, like if I pull over to the shoulder, thank you.
The shoulder.
Of the road, that's a public road. Is the candidate allowed to park a truck with a big sign on?
In the two locations I'm thinking about, no, you would not be able to, because it would be, in my mind, it would be impeding traffic.
Okay.
Right, and so that would be
I
a separate
agree with
violation.
you. My second question is of health. If there are people distributing food, whose responsibility is it to make sure that the food was properly prepared, et cetera, et cetera?
Public Health Department would normally review that. When it comes to food that is cooked, I believe there's certain restrictions. If it's prepackaged, which is a lot of the times some of it is not prepackaged, but if it's prepackaged, then you don't have to have a food handling permit. But if it's cooked on site, I believe you have to have the food handling permit.
So that came into my mind with the food trucks is or there was food being given out of the back of a pickup truck. That bothered me from a public health standpoint. How do we know that food was properly prepared?
Correct. You don't know how long it's been out there. Those are the concerns. Now, of course, there are other instances where people do have these type of barbecues or sales from their truck, right? I've seen the person that has their trunk open and they're selling tamales, right? We're not regulating those. There's separate food safety rules for that. Of course, if public health is called, then they'll go out there and talk to them. Just totally separate. But in this instance, the reason why it's not just a concern from a food safety issue, right? Whether the food is being produced, prepared, and handled safely under our food establishment ordinance. The concern is, yeah, you have individuals congregating there when they really should go and vote and then, go back to wherever they are, work or home or whatever. When you have food, you start congregating individuals from being there, and that causes traffic, right? Pedestrian traffic. And that's something we're trying to avoid. Even if they were to take it off, usually lines form, and that's something, again, we're trying to avoid.
Okay, thank you. Those are my questions. Does anyone else have questions?
So first, a comment and concern. When you were speaking, that didn't align exactly with what was on the slides in front of us. You talked about not attaching signs to other signs, not affixing signs to existing city signs. But what the language on the slide said was you couldn't even put one up freestanding if it's within a foot of an existing sign.
Yeah, can you go back to the slide, Carlos? Right there.
Right.
Yeah, so I glossed over that part. There is a minimum square foot that you have between signs. I believe it is 1 foot of another sign, but within the ordinance under the sign portion of it, we do have that you can affix it to other structures. And again, the goal was not to have like in the picture where you have, signs on top of signs and.
So what happens when 8 o'clock, we realize there's 10 signs and they don't have 1 foot between each of them? How do you determine which candidate put their signs up first and which candidate put them up in violation of the law?
I wouldn't imagine a city staff member out there with a ruler measuring every sign from another sign. But I think you would have staff out there throughout the day kind of monitoring, and they would be able to see what signs have been put up. And then, of course, if there's a sign that is closer than it should be, right, just from eyeing it, then, of course, they would be able to remove it.
But which one would they remove if they're not sure which one went up first?
If they are sure, then they would remove the one that they know came in second, right? If they're not sure, then I would hope they would use good judgment and reach out to both of the candidates and have them relocate them. I don't anticipate, if individuals follow this, I don't anticipate us having that much of an issue, but I could be wrong.
Staff is also very cautious about removing or even touching any signs historically. So I think the way we are going to, like anything, education, it's new, it's a transition year. We're not going to be, the sign police, right? But we are going to say, if this is passed, these are the rules, right? But also educate a lot. And if we see non-compliance, say, hey, this is non-compliance because of this, how would you like to, put it into compliance? So I think with whether it's zoning enforcement or, secretary's office, there's going to have to be an educational campaign with this.
And that's one of my concerns, especially when we're trying to change the rules during a current cycle. And this is an election cycle, whether we want to admit it or not, because we've seen too many missteps in the past by city staff, again, for lack of understanding. And now we're trying to do this in the middle of a campaign cycle. There needs to, and I don't see anything that says, okay, if there's a violation, this is who the final arbiter is. This is the number you call to report it, which means laws that are being applied at one location could be applied differently at somewhere else, or if it's just a different time of day because you've got a different staff member now, that is a serious concern. I don't think enough has gone into this. This, in my opinion, should have come up as a workshop so that several members of the commission could have had input into it before it came to us for a yes or no vote. And I'm not happy that that suggestion was pushed back on. I think some of the language in here also makes it look arbitrary and capricious. Some of the language that I saw about loudspeakers causing traffic accidents or could pose a risk and cause a traffic accident. Well, if that's true everywhere in the city, not just within a polling place. So if something loud might distract a driver and cause an accident, why isn't that true in front of a church? Why isn't it true in front of City Hall? Why is it only true at a polling place during an election cycle? And does that create a situation then where if I'm a private property owner and I'm 1,001 feet away. Well, now I don't fall under your regulations. And now not only can I use loudspeakers, but I can crank it up so that I can be heard at that polling location. But now the people that drive by are subjected to even louder sound. I think there's a lot of problems inherent in this right now that should be worked out. I think this came to us too soon.
I have a question on the signs. So if there is like that picture, 40 signs up there, is it $250 per sign?
I'm sorry, what was
Or
that?
$500 per sign, whatever the fee will be?
500.
Yeah, so it would be for each violation. So
For each
each
violation.
sign that's in violation would be the 250, 500, whatever the window fine is.
And what if it is placed by somebody else?
Well, I think that comes down to every single violation that you have before municipal court. It will require us to look at the facts, interview the witnesses, and then prosecute from that point, right? There's going to be fact situations with each instance where it's going to be contingent on the prosecutor to go through the facts and find out whether or not they can enforce it. But as far as sound, we do have a noise ordinance that's by certain decibels, so we regulate noise already.
But we allow loud noise during the day,
Up
which
to a
means
cer-
1,000
Up
feet
to a
is
certain
good.
decibel, but I do believe, and I'm looking for the provision, that the sound amplification is a state law requirement. This would just give our staff the ability to enforce it instead of us having to reach out to the election administrator and then have them deal with it.
And I think on the signs, to Commissioner Cardenas' point also, my concern would be one campaign that has a great organization and great ground game going in there exactly 24 hours before when we're allowed to put up signs and wallpapering it every 12 inches. And guess what? Nobody else can put up signs now because my signs were up first and I'm every 12 inches. So I think there's some serious free speech constitutional issues that have not been thought about sufficiently enough yet.
I have two questions. The first is, does the county have something like this already in place? To your knowledge?
I'm sorry, can you repeat
Does the
that?
county have any electioneering laws in place at the moment?
The only regulations they have, so county is different from a city. County is like a general law city where they have to follow state law. They can't make up their own rules, like the way we do with the code of ordinances or the charter. And so under the election code, the only thing that they can regulate is 100 feet from the polling location.
Which is state law.
And it's a class B or A misdemeanor.
And my second question, has this been communicated with the election administrator? Just because I'm thinking we're regulating two polling locations, so there might be confusion that these rules apply to other polling locations. I'm asking if this has been reviewed
No,
by the election.
Well, yes.
I don't know.
Yeah, Mr. Garza is familiar that we are looking into adopting an electioneering ordinance.
Thank you.
I think that this is just to give some context and history, staff has had concerns with, I think our library, Juan, could kind of come up and speak a little bit if you want to have context as to the difficulty in some aspects that staff has had to endure. It's a stressful time. It's also an exciting time, but however, I think it's important to, if you'd like to hear from staff in terms of what are they seeing? And I think what we're asking for is just clarity, right? Because there's a lot of ambiguity. And so that's why we need clarity. However that comes in whatever you form, the mayor and the commission, you all want to clarify for us. It's just that there is some ambiguity there. We're just asking for if there can be better clarification so that we can be clearer to the candidates and also to staff and to the whole process.
Welcome, Juan.
I have a question. Oh, sorry.
No, you go.
Well, are we inventing the wheel here, or do other cities have restrictions?
No, there are other cities that have restrictions on electioneering, and state law allows us to adopt those restrictions.
Do you know if there's any litigation against freedom of speech that has gone to court for it?
There's been some cities that have, the outcomes have been favorable for the city.
Thank you.
Yeah, my name is Juan Jose Guerra, Library Services Director. And the major concern is our patrons sometimes feel when they get out of the car, they feel like they're following them in the parking lot, it is a major safety concern for our staff and our patrons. And so that's the biggest concern. It's getting to a point that they feel that they can't even go to the library because they're following them with a sign, engaging them and all that. So that's the concern.
Thank you, Juan. Mayor or Commissioner Macias, do you have any comments?
I just wanted to know, Will, can you go to the next slide? If there was anything on, next slide, I don't think I saw it. Sorry, I didn't get this slide. If there was anything, or maybe there already is, but if there is anything on time, like how early can you put up a sign? How late should your sign stay there? I know when I ran, I still see some candidate signs on there and it's already a year and 3 to 4 months later. And so it's a concern because one, it doesn't look pleasant. It's not like we're beautifying the city with all these signs. And the last one is that due to weather, they end up blowing away and ends up being on the roads. It ends up being trash. So for me, it's just ensuring that we enforce that people who put up their signs should take them off by a certain time, because what ends up happening when they don't clean that up, it ends up being someone else's problem and it becomes trash.
Yes, so to answer your question, I think it's on the first slide, right after the title slide. Right there. So, one further. Well, so it's 24 hours before the polling locations opens, and then 24 hours after the last day of election, right? So
There it is.
there you go. So this ordinance only restricts or regulates electioneering on city property, right? Some of the signs that you're referring to are on commercial or private properties. And so a lot of that would be regulated by our UDC. We can't regulate for content, so we couldn't tell someone to remove a sign from their property after the election has occurred, right? So that's still something that we're not touching, we're not regulating. So I know throughout the city, that might be some blight, depending on the person's perspective. But in the instance of another one that we're not regulating, which would be parking, instead of the sign, is you see those large trailers that are usually parked off of a frontage, and it has like vote for whoever, and it's a large sign that's affixed onto a tractor trailer or something similar.
Semi-truck.
Yes, those we're not regulating with this ordinance either. What we usually regulate for that, because we can't regulate the sign content, is for parking, right? So is this a property, is it zoned to have this type of parking? Does it have to have pavement? Are the setbacks followed? Is it an accessory structure now? That's how we look at those signs. But for this one alone, this ordinance, it's only city property where we have the polling location, and it's 24 hours before the election period begins, right? And that includes early voting period.
Mayor, any
Thank you.
comments?
Just the last, oh, I'm sorry, Mayor.
No, go ahead, Commissioner.
One last comment is that I worry about the whole 1 foot, 2 foot, because every time that it's election time, you just see them stagnant, like one after the other after the other, and you have all candidates doing that. So I feel it's going to be hard to set a restriction on having that space between them. Only because I've seen how congested it gets and how competitive it gets, and people putting signs over other people. So I think it's a good start to educate first the candidates when they pick up a packet, and just educating them on that. I think that'll be very helpful. Thank you so much, Will, for answering my question. And sorry, Mayor.
Thank you.
No, it's okay. I think the only question I had was on the enforcement side. I think there should be first a warning given to the candidate. I know you said staff typically it's all about education first, but that's not in the in a proposed ordinance, but I think that there should be a written warning provided to the campaign or to the candidate, and then go towards a fine situation, right?
Yes, we can, depending on the will of the commission, we can add that in, of course, to where we have a first warning and then go through the enforcement process.
And then I think I do agree with Commissioner Macias and Commissioner De Los Santos on the 1 foot. Like, I think obviously well-organized campaigns will go out there now. I mean, in previous campaigns, and they blanket the premium sites. I mean, it's just wall to wall of signs, right? And you create this situation, and then it's going to create issues for staff trying to enforce that 1 foot issue. And then, I mean, it continues to get worse, the way I see it. So I think, whatever way we can improve the language there, I think I do support working on that one.
So to respond to that, what some cities do, instead of having a distance requirement between signs, they limit how many signs a candidate can have out there, right? So let's say, vote for Will Trevino. Not that I'm running for office, just using myself as an example. But, vote for Will, and I'm only allowed 3 or 4 signs, right? That way I don't have, 20 signs out there. And so that is one way that some cities have enforced that. And I think the practicalness of it is they don't want staff out there with a ruler measuring each sign, making sure it's 12 inches from each other, right? So I think that's another way of regulating it. But then you're going to get the naysayers that will say, well, I want 10 signs out there. I don't want just 3. So you have to kind of balance that.
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, I was going to suggest that already. No, but I really like that idea of limit. And because at the end of the day, if I can explain that, at times, people who are going to the library, they already know who they're going to vote for. Or when they go to the voting polls, they already know who their candidates are. So sometimes signs may not make that difference. But I mean, that's just my input.
So when you made those comments, it made me think of the nuns measuring our skirt 3 inches apart.
Mayor Pro Tem and Commissioners, we did want to add, so for the municipal elections, just on the municipal election end, when the candidates are done, the Office of the City Secretary does follow up with them and notify them to please remove the signs. Sometimes they do and sometimes they don't.
Thank you. Thank you. I have to say that in the 15 years that I've been here, there have been many elections where I thought something was not quite right in terms of many of the items that were brought up into this ordinance. Last year it was the food trucks and similar things that already been mentioned. And each time I asked, I was told, well, there's nothing we can do about it. And I would say, why isn't there anything that you can do about it? And I was always told, because we don't have election nearing ordinances. So I am glad to see that you have given us something to look at, and I believe it's a wonderful start.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
And something, it's great what we're talking about.
Name first for the record, Eddie.
Yeah.
Eddie Garcia. It is wonderful.
I'm sorry, are we at the open
I don't.
public hearing section?
Are there any other
Yeah, but
comments?
officially, I've got other comments, but we can open the public hearing. I can come back to them.
Does anyone else have a complaint about that? All right.
Thank you. Again, my name's Eddie Garcia, and this is wonderful. To see this happening here right now, definitely this is going to be a major election coming up, since it's a general election. But one of the things that I also would like to maybe address is Veterans Park. I think that any city facility that similar to this should be respected, as there have been some signs being placed on the fence itself. I think that that is disrespectful for those that have fought for our freedoms. And as elected officials, or those that are wanting to run for that office, I think we should show some respect for those veterans.
I agree
So
with you.
hopefully we can address that as part of the ordinance.
I think that one's covered in
is
no
covered.
affixing.
In this ordinance.
Yeah.
But thank you, that is an absolutely good comment. Any other public comments?
So the other comments I wanted to make,
Do you want to close public hearing?
I'll move to close the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
So Counselor, do we have something, some language in this that addresses approaching someone on foot?
Not on foot, that is electioneering activity, but we do have where they can approach a moving vehicle.
Yeah, but I know the concern expressed by the director of the library was about, as you're walking from the vehicle to the building, being approached by people campaigning. And if that's one of the chief concerns, it's not being addressed.
Well, so we don't want to fully prohibit electioneering, right?
Mhm.
An individual can tell the electioneering representative, I'm just here to go to the library, please leave me alone, and they should respect that. But then if we add in a provision like that where you start interfering with the electioneering activities rather than just regulating time, place, and manner, then we will have arbitrary and capricious issues. And that's the reason why it's not addressed. The
Yeah.
traffic one with the moving violation, that one is reasonable, and so that would probably pass constitutional muster.
The other thing I want to mention, I want to admonish staff to make sure that, especially if it gets into anything related to food regulation, the standards have to be across the board. It cannot be that we're applying the strictest standards we can because it's an election, but at Sombrero Festival, let's say, or another city event, we're not following or enforcing those same food restrictions and food laws. It has to be fair across the board. We cannot pick and choose, because I think we've seen that before. Citizens have commented on that before, and it's improper. So I admonish you guys against trying to say, we're going to go out there and dot every I and cross every T at this, but not over here and not over there and not over there.
I have a couple of comments, Will. So I like the idea that other people were mentioning about the amount. I don't like the 1 foot thing. I think it's going to get real dirty. I think there's going to be too many people going out there and putting them at 7:58 instead of 8 o'clock, whatever it may be. And if I really wanted to, I'm sure somebody's going to go out there and probably measure and say that's 11 inches and 7/8. I mean, so I don't think it works that way. I think when you limit it to a reasonable number, I think 3 is nowhere near enough. I would say somewhere closer to 10 probably. With the restrictions of the size and all, I think that's something better. At one point, you had mentioned something about a vehicle parking with a sign. Is that off? Because I don't really see it on here. And the third is, how are you going to limit, for these general elections, who are you going to speak to on the presidential campaign that they can't put signs up there? And who's going to be responsible for that? Are you going to try to send a misdemeanor seat to one of the presidential candidates? I mean, what are we going to do?
Yeah, so the person that normally gets cited is the person that's has care, custody, and control of the violation, right? And so if it is obviously, Mr. Trump or Ms. Harris, we're not going to send them a citation. But if it's the local campaign office that's putting those signs up in violation, then in that instance, of course, we would reach out to them. As the mayor said, we'll have some first notice and education before the actual enforcement. And I think, of course, if this passes, the final version of this will be shared with the county election administrator for his dissemination as well to the candidates, as well as we'll have locations of this at the polling locations, right? Or copies of this at the polling locations. And then to answer your question about vehicles that have signs on them, we do have a section in here that says trailers, semi-trailers, or vehicles of any type are prohibited from being parked in the parking lot for use to display electioneering items. I mean, the parking lot is there for the use of the individuals using the facility, whether it's the library or to vote. So we don't want to use up all those spaces. At Central Library, there is a little bit more parking spaces than at Southmost. so that might not be an issue at Central Library, but we've had instances where people have parked trucks there with their board signs. And that's electioneering, but we're trying to curtail that.
So you can't have them there even if I'm driving it. I mean, I just want us to be clear, because I don't want for this to be an issue in the future where somebody didn't understand what it was or what it wasn't.
Correct.
So let's just make it real clear that yes or no, whatever the answer is going to be. And then what about those signs that are going to be put up by Mr. Trump or Ms. Harris? Is it going to have a number like you're asking of who I can call? I mean, it's just, do we want to put that on every sign and make sure that, or is it just going to be against the city, elected officials or whoever running for the city and not against whoever's running for senator?
Yeah, and I think you guys might know more than I do because I haven't had to put up election signs, but I think TxDOT requires you to put some language on there.
Yes. Yes, when it's in the right of way and also who's like responsible for it, but it's never asked for a phone number.
For a phone number,
And I
yeah.
think what you're mentioning on here is contact information, place the sign.
Yeah, and I think some of this will be education, right? We have to reach out to the local entities that are running those general elections and notify them, hey, we have new regulations in place, please follow.
And
Thank you.
And that's an important distinction with Commissioner Cardenas raised, because while there is disclaimer language, a lot of campaigns, especially when you have offices, are open and anybody can go and pick up signs. Because for your yard, for your friend, for your brother, whatever you want to do. So you could have people that are not officially with the campaign who pick up signs and then they go out there and place them. And it's not the candidate, not the party, not anything in the organization. So that would be a challenge also. I think we need to ensure that if and when this passes, that we develop a form that will be used for citation, whether it's for the first warning and education so that it's documented properly, that there was a warning issued first, and then for any violation so that, again, that the documentation is proper. I think we need to start thinking about now what that form would look like, but it's got to be a standard process that can be applied to both locations.
Okay.
Is that it? Thank you very much for your hard work. I'll entertain a motion.
I would like to move that we table pending a workshop, just because I think there's a few things we want to work out. And I don't think this needs to be 30 days or 90 days or anything like that. I think this can be done the next couple of weeks. But I think there's still some finer points that we need to finish or polish off on this before we actually take a final vote. That's my suggestion and motion to table.
We have a second?
I just want to get the number straight for how many signs we're going to be allowing.
So then it dies for lack of a second.
So if that's not a second, so it dies for lack of a second.
To answer your question, it was proposed, I just threw a number out there, 3. Is there a number that you would prefer?
It depends on the square footage of the location and how many areas it's possible to put signs in. And I don't think we have those calculations today. Because I think those are things that need to be looked at is frontage, square footage, everything. Because you're also not limited to the frontage there. You're talking about several different factors that come into play. And I think it's irresponsible to try and put that number to paper today without looking at those things.
And is there any other motions?
I mean, is this something that we can pass pending holding that number?
Yeah, so like with the billboards, we passed it with amendments. So we could pass this with amendments as discussed.
Before the second reading?
Before the second reading.
Then that would be my motion.
Okay.
Do we have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion passes with the amendments as discussed.
And if we can get our nay votes recorded also, I'd appreciate that, Mayor Pro Tem.
Certainly.
Yes, if we can record the nay votes,
I'm a nay on this.
thank you. That's Commissioner De Los Santos.
Thank you. Next item.
Thank you. Next item is public hearing number 7. Public hearing and action on first reading on ordinance number 2024-1752, amending Chapter 2 Administration, Article 2, City Commission of the Code of Ordinances to adopt reasonable regulations for elected officials meeting with developers. Office of the City Attorney.
Next slide. And one more. So the purpose of this ordinance is to shine the light, if you will, on developer interactions with our elected officials. Now, the ordinance does define developers to be those that are wanting to discuss certain land development projects with our commission and mayor. Next slide. And so what we seek to do is elected officials would be the ones that are being regulated here. Developers are those individuals or entities that are engaged in the planning, design, construction, or management of property development projects. Private meeting is a one-on-one essentially with a commissioner or mayor and a developer. And then city staff is any of the individuals that are on the city's payroll. Next slide. Can you go back? So what we are seeking to do is, when it comes to developers usually seek incentives in the form of tax abatements, PID assessments, or TERS. And so when it comes to those type of dealings, the charter, and this is my opinion, the charter gives the city manager the operation side of the workings of the city, right? So city council sets, or commission sets the policy, and then the city manager runs with it. Can you go one slide after this? No, go back. No, I mean, go forward. All right. So who is not impacted by this? This does not prohibit the incidental or casual encounter where there's no discussion about a development project that occurs. You may attend trainings, public events, forums, or gatherings where developers are present. Private events as well, as long as the discussion is not not discussing development projects. And then, of course, I understand that there might be times where a developer wants to complain about a project or about how a department is handling the project. And so developers would still be able to send written correspondence or emails to commission notifying them of their concerns. Can you go one slide? All right. So what we are proposing is that elected officials of the city would be prohibited from meeting privately with developers. And you would be able to meet with them, but you would have a member of the staff present from the city, or it would be conducted as part of an open meeting. Very similar to where we had one developer come in and they did a presentation before the public during a presentation period. Can you go to the next slide? This would add to the open government in the sense that notes would be taken. The public would be able to know who met with who, because it'd be part of a record, right? It'd be part of the calendaring. Next slide. Of course, if there's any concerns about that information, like if a developer shares financial information that is proprietary, we could always seek a ruling from the Attorney General's office to withhold it. And then the first violation would be a censure or written reprimand, and then subsequent violations would be a fine amount.
And that's a fine for each?
I'm sorry?
And that's a fine for the elected official and the developer?
That would be a fine for the elected official. Next slide. Questions?
Are you done, Will? Are you, is that?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Do we want to do public comment first? Do we want to ask our questions?
I'm good with public comment first.
This is a public hearing. Are there any public comments? Hearing none.
I'll move to close.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Who would like to go first?
I guess I'll lead off, and I'll do my best to be brief. I've been contacted several times over my first 3.5 years in office, sometimes by citizens who have concerns, sometimes by developers, sometimes by people doing business with the city in different fields under contract, and sometimes by city employees. And I've confided in our city manager about this, and this is not a reflection on her because I've seen progress as a result of discussions I've been able to have with her. But we know there are people who are concerned about not being dealt with in good faith by the city of Brownsville, whether it's internally or externally. And being able to have access to the elected representatives to voice that in a manner where they're not under duress is important. And I'm sorry, but when you place a staff member and then this had to be registered through the office of the city manager, that is placing someone under duress. Because just like those folks who have asked to meet with me privately and off-site for fear of retaliation if it were known they were doing that, this is creating that exact situation where they know that someone's not only there, but they are taking notes, and those notes are going to be public. And whether it's the city manager or the director of a department that their business relies on to do business with the city, those people are now on notice. And does that mean it's going to take longer to get my inspection? Does that mean it's going to take longer to pass? Does that mean I won't pass inspection because of what I said to a commissioner about my concern with how I was being handled? That is what this does. And most especially when you're saying developers. So anybody else who's doing business with the city, you can still talk freely to an elected representative. But if you're a developer, you have to have a babysitter at your meeting taking notes, and nobody else does. That's treating someone like a second-class citizen because of the business they're in, and that is fundamentally wrong. There's no problem that I am aware of today that is the result of developers reaching out to elected representatives. And in fact, I think there have been improvements in processes that have come out of developers talking to city commissioners, because that also gives us a better understanding. I think there are times when staff tries to convey things, but sometimes there's still a disconnect. And when we have access to individuals directly one-on-one, things are clarified. And we're able to come here and discuss with staff or with our colleagues with a very clear understanding and in an informed position. This threatens to take that away from us. This is fundamentally wrong and should not be passed.
Yeah, on this one, I completely agree with almost everything Commissioner De Los Santos said. I think this is something that we should have. We should be available for everybody in the city. If they are developers or not. I think this is, I don't like this one, so I don't agree with it. And I'd like to hear the reasoning, like Commissioner De Los Santos said, on why this is important.
I'm going to make some, how about we all comment and then legal can answer?
Okay.
Would that be okay?
Yeah, no, definitely.
Okay, is that all right with you?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so I am going to say that through my time, I have been asked for many meetings with not just developers, but restaurateurs or business people and so forth. And I think they appreciate, I believe they have appreciated that personal private moment with me. I have personally never been asked to do something or been told, well, if you do this for me, I'll give you a donation to your campaign, thankfully. But I can only speak to my own experience. I think that what I don't agree with in terms of this ordinance is the assumption that something bad will happen at that meeting, rather than the hope that something good will happen at that meeting. It does put the onus on us, the elected official, to report if something bad happened during that meeting, and to not fall into that hole that can get us all into trouble and not serve the best interest of the city, of the people of Brownsville, which we were elected, who we were elected by to sit in these chairs. So I'm not going to agree with this one for those reasons.
I agree with the three of you. So, I believe that we're entrusted to be the voice of the city, people who voted for us. And I think that the people deserve to sit with anyone, whether they be business owners, developers, citizens, any constituent. I agree. Three of you.
I share the same sentiments with my colleagues. That's all I have to say.
Mayor, Commissioner Macias?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Temp. I do, and while I appreciate, Will's intent to try to propose some improvements here, I do agree with everyone here that this creates more issues than it potentially solves. When people do reach out, especially if it's something that is technical in nature, or they're proposing something that is outside the boundaries of what I am elected to serve on, I always refer them to staff first. And I think that should be a practice, right? But I don't think we can legislate that through ordinance. But that's just my opinion here.
Commissioner Macias?
I see this from both sides. I feel like it is good in the sense that it's documented. There could be times where, as elected officials, are accused of malpractice or accused of corruption, and I feel like this could be a good way to have things documented and say, hey, anything that you're accusing me of, it's not. I'm sorry, 1 second.
On that note, I would like to add one last thing, because we've seen this before, and I've had to reach out to the city secretary's office and city attorney's office. Even sometimes that I've gone back and watched videos, and it was meetings that happened a year ago, 2 years ago, even before I was elected. And I'm reading the minutes, they don't match up. So just because somebody's there taking notes doesn't mean everything's going to be captured accurately. And if anything, that could be detrimental if something's taken down the wrong way. So it's not an asset to have somebody there taking notes on everything that's said and done at every time.
And so just to finish up my comment, I feel it's good that it, in the sense that it creates transparency, it's a documentation process in the sense that if you're ever accused of something, you have paper trail that you can always revert back to. And so that could work in your benefit. But on the contrary, I hear your statements and I hear the concern that it could be an intimidating process if you're having to file and then having someone there to write in everything that you're stating for the person requesting the meeting. So I understand it from both statements. It is risky. I do feel that we need to really consider this and just be careful on how we vote with this, only because it's like limiting the free speech or that accessibility of a commissioner to a developer. So with those, I reserve or in my comments with that.
Madam Mayor Pro Tem, to the city manager.
Sure.
One question to the city manager, and I already know the answer to this, but if any of us were asked to meet with a developer and we were uncomfortable about what might happen at that meeting, I assume right now we could call you and say, could I get somebody from staff to come with me to this meeting? And I know you've always been very accommodating, as has your staff been. So we don't need an ordinance to make that happen. You guys do that for us already, don't you?
Yeah, that's correct. We already, I mean, when you call us, we're there. If you want us to prepare something, we'll be preparing. So I think that's been the practice. And we necessarily haven't had issues with that. And so that's how we've just handled it as of now in the last couple of years.
So I will entertain a motion.
Move to deny.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone disagree? Hearing none, motion passes to deny. Thank you. Next item.
Next item, public hearing number 8, public hearing and action on first reading on ordinance number 2024-1750, amending Chapter 40, Elections, Article 1 in general of the Code of Ordinances to adopt a municipal campaign finance code.
So Mayor and Commission, the Municipal Campaign Finance Code, why? Within the democratic system, we want to ensure that there is integrity, independence, and impartiality of those who are elected. And the purpose of this ordinance is to diminish any perceived or actual connection between contributions and influence. Next slide. So from this chart that is really small on my screen, the proposed for Brownsville is at the top. And then for comparison's sake, we include what a few other cities have done. So contribution limits for mayor in Brownsville, we're proposing 1,000 per individual. For commission, 1,000. For PACs would be 2,500, cash limit of 100. And then we're also proposing expenditure limits for mayor, and of course, at-large positions would be 100,000. If there's a runoff election, 25,000. For council, that would be 50,000. Runoff election, 10,000. The contribution cycle would be 4-year period, and then a separate runoff period as well. Repayment limits. So for mayor and at-large, it would be 50,000, where you can repay yourself from contributions received, and 25,000 for council. What other cities have done, like McAllen, their limit is a little higher for mayor, 10,000. For council, it's 5,000. PAC contributions are the same. And then their contribution cycle is per election cycle. So it's from when you file to when you're elected, and that includes the runoff period. In Austin, the asterisk shows that that is a charter provision, and those 400 limits are by CPI. So it increases every year depending on the CPI. They do have expenditure limits. The only difference between their expenditure limits is that it's voluntary. If you sign a voluntary expenditure limit contract with the city, they have a pot of money where you would receive contributions for, right? And that pot of money is not taxpayer money. It is the funds that they receive for each application when people file for office. And it's also donations received from various organizations. San Antonio has 1,000 for mayor, 500 for council. PACs are the same. Houston has 5,000 for mayor, 5,000 for council, and 10,000 for PACs. They do have repayment limits, but they don't have expenditure limits. And then Dallas is 5,000 for mayor and 1,000 for council, 10,000, and then that's supposed to be 2,500 for commission. Next slide. And so for the contribution cycle, for example, May 3rd, 2025, which is coming up, that would run between January 1st, 2022 through December 31st, 2025. The next election would be May 1st, 2027, and that period for those offices that are up in 2027 would be between January 1st, 2024 through December 31st, 2027. We went over briefly the limits, but it's 1,000 per person. For PACs and corporations would be 20,500. Expenditure limits for both mayor and at large are the same. And then commission, 50,000, 10,000 for runoff elections. And then repayment for mayor and at large. And at large is included in the mayor because obviously you're running at large. And so it's more expensive than a district race. And so we have those limits there. Next slide. There are prohibitions on the candidate. So a candidate could not receive funds from a litigant who's suing the city, where that litigant is seeking 50,000 or more in claims. Contractors before commission would be prohibited from contributing to a campaign, and that is from when we solicit, whether it's RFP, ITB, to 180 days after the award of the contract, or if we decline to award it. City employees would not be able to solicit unless it's on their off clock, right? They're not in uniform, they're not at work. And then because these particular committees have some quasi judicial power, or in other instances, they have their own budgets, it would be prohibited for an ethics commission member, GBIC, BCIC, PNZ, Board of Adjustment, or Brownsville Public Utilities Board, or the Building Standards Commission to solicit for funds for someone's contribution. Now, a member of GBIC could donate to your campaign or any candidate's campaign, but they couldn't solicit for you or on your behalf. So while state law does require campaign finance reports, and that is the state law requirement, January 15th, the semi-annual report, July 15th, the semi-annual report, and then 30 days before the general election and the 8th day before the general election. We have made it a requirement within the Campaign Municipal Finance Code to require that as well here. And with that report, we are also requiring additional information, which would be copies of the bank statements, along with any cleared checks. Of course, the information that is confidential would be redacted. We wouldn't want to put people's account numbers up there or routing numbers from checks, et cetera. Next slide. Can you go back? There would be a general penalty. As with all general penalties, the window fine starts at $250, max is $500, and the information that we would be seeking would be posted, which is already done. The city secretary is required to post not later than the 10th business day after the receipt of each report. And so they would be posting the report along with the copies of the checks, bank statements that have been redacted for the public's knowledge. Any questions?
This is a public hearing. Are there any public comments? Please state your name.
Luis Villarreal. I just got a question. Putting these limits on these funds, want to limit my freedom of speech because I travel a lot. Candidates represent me when I'm out of town. I expect them to, have the funding they need, everything they need. Putting limits on this, I don't think it's appropriate. Most people that contribute to this, they don't expect nothing in return. We do it because we think those people should be in office. And I think what the gentleman's doing over here, it's holding me from my freedom of speech. Thanks.
Any other public comments?
Eddie Garcia. And again, it's wonderful to have caps, the 50,000, 100,000, but limiting as to who and how much they want to contribute. I think that's going to limit the number of people that would normally run, because if you're limiting how much they can get, the pool of candidates, it's going to diminish. It's going to hinder how many candidates are going to be wanting to run for office. So that's my only concern, limiting the cap on contributions.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
Hi, I'm Denise Chavez, and I would just sort of echo what Mr. Eddie Garcia here said, that I understand the need for regulation on things, but I would not want us to limit the pool of candidates available to our city, only to those that can afford the election on their own. That's my only comment on this. It reminds me too much of when this country, in its inception, only allowed certain people to vote, only certain people that had enough land ownership. And then those were the only people that could then become elected. And so I just ask you to think about that, consider that. We don't want to limit the pool of candidates.
Any other comments from the public? Entertain a motion to close
I'll move
public
to
hearing.
close.
All in favor?
Aye.
Not any opposed? Which side we started over here the last time, so Ryan, you want to start us off?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. And thank you for the people who came out to public comment today. My very first point I want to bring up is moving this meeting today to 2 p.m. and limiting the opportunities for residents and candidates to come out here and express their opinion is my very first concern. When we are talking about open government and transparency, we want the input of the people because they're the ones that ultimately run and end up sitting in this same seat. And that's one of my top concerns. My other concern is also the language and the language that is within this ordinance is very, very conservative. There are cities that don't have the language as conservative as we are proposing today. And for us to go about this when we haven't had, that I know of, issues in the past to result in something outrageous as this is very concerning to me. My other concern is how this came about. When I asked for more information, I was told that I could not have this as a workshop. So this was put on the agenda today for us to discuss and vote on today. That's another problem I have with this because this is not going to impact, well, this is going to impact my election, their election, but also future elections. And to the people's point that just came up here, we should not limit the opportunities for people who want to do their civil duty and come and serve. When we start limiting the contributions that they receive, the amounts of everything that's specified in this ordinance, we are shrinking the pool. And people like me, who are a first generation elected official, is progress for Brownsville. But when we start considering these things where we're limiting the abilities for more people to come out here, I have a concern with that because Brownsville is right now progressing at a very rapid rate and a lot of eyes are on us right now. And for us to be doing something, entertaining something like this without having an actual conversation first is something that I am not in agreement with. That's all.
Well, as difficult as it is for me to put campaign limits, I'm a private school football coach, running at large. I don't make a lot of money, but I do believe in, I would rather see, this is just my personal view, I'm sitting here in a seat, I would rather have to go raise money the hard way than to have an opponent of mine or someone in the future with 18 point whatever billion dollars being invested down in the port and bigger companies coming down here. I'd hate to have to go against someone that's backed with $40,000-$50,000 from one individual. I don't know what that would do to a politician. It's my personal opinion that a politician would be. And I respect you, sir, that you said some give because they don't want anything in return. Sadly, I think some people give because they want a lot in return. And that's why Congress has limitations. That is why certain state officials have limitations. And it is to stop what could possibly become something detrimental to the city of Brownsville. So, like I said, I know that you guys did work. I unfortunately was not in town, but I do know that, Will, you met with multiple people throughout the week about this for hours of your time. I do know that there's a lot of questions that were questioned. I know that there's multiple revisions of this that went through. So, I mean, I do believe that limitations, just as much as everyone knows that I'm not for signs in general. So that's why I voted that way. But I do believe that there needs to be some regulation and limitations on campaigns for the city of Brownsville.
I do believe there needs to be regulation. I cannot remember anyone who gave me more than the limits listed here that I can recall. I also didn't go solicit from large vendors because I thought that was a conflict of interest, and I didn't think conflict of interest belonged in my seat with me as I decided what was in the best interest of the people of Brownsville. I do think that other cities, as we saw on the slide, have put in limits for similar reasons. And I don't want to see a situation, a day when elections are bought and sold. I don't want to see a day when elections and the policy that comes after those elections are guided and structured because of the donations that were received in the thousands and thousands of dollars. And that's my personal opinion. So I do agree, just like in other cities, with putting restrictions up. Those restrictions can change as the years go by and different people sit in these seats. But I think it is an important thing to put in place and a point of reference that we need to go forward to. Personally, I value the people that give me $50. I value the people that hand me, I had a check once from a woman who gave me a check for $13. Those are the people I want to serve and value. And I will craft my campaign based on the money that I raise, rather than thousands and thousands given to me when something will be expected from me on the other side. It doesn't have to cost hundreds of thousands of dollars to run a race in Brownsville, Texas, unless we choose to spend that much money. So those are my thoughts, and I will support it.
I think passing something like this as written ensures that elections will be bought and paid for in the future. I think had something like this been in place 2 years ago, there would be a different individual sitting in the seat for District 1 right now, because that would take away 50% of what he spent on his campaign. And to say a candidate's going to lose 50% of their war chest, no matter how big or small, for no good reason, is absolutely us controlling the outcome of elections and tilting it in favor of those who are more affluent and who can afford it. I think if we want to say this should be a level playing field, limiting how much you can spend in total on a campaign is reasonable. But to say how much an individual can give you. So someone who has a bigger network, no problem raising the money. Somebody who has a smaller network, too bad. The less affluent citizens who don't know as many people, too bad. Even if you've got one friend who's willing to give you a check for $5,000, you can't accept it now. So it absolutely makes it easier for someone who's willing to spend $100,000 of their own money out of their own pocket and not have to worry about getting it back. You can absolutely buy that election, because the guy that has trouble raising money, if it's from more than 10 donors, now it's not a level playing field. We're gonna make it harder for you who has a smaller network of people and who has less means at your disposal. Donations and political expression and advocacy is about freedom of speech. And I'm going to cite some of the decision from Citizens United, because this was talked about, and this is a Supreme Court decision. And the court held that freedom of speech clause of the First Amendment prohibits the government from restricting independent expenditures for political campaigns by corporations, nonprofit organizations, labor unions, and other associations. We're trying to limit what PACs can give us. Our labor unions, police, and fire, they have PACs. And now we're saying we're going to limit that. That to me is a direct violation of Citizens United. I have a huge problem with it. The fact that McAllen is proposing or has $10,000, and we're saying for Brownsville, 1/10 of that. Aren't we supposed to be trying to get out of their shadow? Aren't we supposed to be the leaders in the valley? Yet that's what we're going to define ourselves as, is McAllen's doing 10, let's do 1. That makes no sense at all. Again, from the Supreme Court, political speech must prevail against laws that would suppress it, whether it's by design or inadvertence. and First Amendment standards must give benefit of any doubt to protecting rather than stifling that speech. Again, if we want to make this something that's more accessible and ensure less corruption and a trusted process, saying you can't spend $1 million on a campaign for mayor, $1 million on a campaign for commissioner, that's reasonable. To say you can't accept more than $1,000 in a donation from one individual every 2 years, that's not reasonable in any way, shape, or form. It's just fundamentally wrong. It will shape the outcome of elections. How a big donation versus a small donation affects someone, for politicians, it'll affect them. It won't affect a public servant, because somebody who's here legitimately, who just wants to make a difference, is not going to be influenced by that. And by the same token, the people that give, who don't want anything in return, it absolutely puts them at a disadvantage, because others who do have special interests, and you know what, I can go and open 3 PACs tomorrow or 10 PACs tomorrow and set up brand new corporations. And now I can give you lots more than donations. But somebody who doesn't have those means, doesn't have those connections, now they're limited. So whereas where we just passed, the citizens of Brownsville just passed compensation for their elected officials. And the argument that won that vote, because nobody thought that would pass, the argument that won it was, this makes it more attainable for the average citizen. If you're someone who's low to moderate income and you have to choose between earning a living and being a representative of the people in your interests, well, now you don't have to make that choice, because now you can get at least $25,000 where you can still contribute to your household and still speak and be a representative for your community. But to say, well, yeah, you were able to get donations before as big as $5,000, and now you can't do that. Now you've got to spend more of your time working on raising the money than on meeting with the constituents. That's putting people of lesser means at a disadvantage, and it's wrong. This is another one that we should have a workshop on this. We should talk about this, and we should talk about limits on what can be spent in total on a campaign. That should be our primary focus. But everything else, if we want to talk about everything, let's talk about everything. But let's set up the opportunity to talk about it, not pass this today up or down without having had a public discussion on it first.
Commissioner Cardenas?
I put this on my Facebook yesterday, and I got several calls today about it. What are the things that they're asking? Why we don't have any limits on what the loan can be paid back for? I mean, we have a limit on the paying back of the loans, but not what somebody can loan themselves for, I think, the same reasons that Commissioner De Los Santos is mentioning. If you loan yourself $100,000 and you can only pay yourself $50,000, well, that will make it out of reach, I believe, as well for many citizens. I couldn't take a $50,000 hit. I don't know if anybody else can or wants to. So I think that's super important on this. I would like to see something on the loan limits that you can give yourself on what a loan, if you're able to pay yourself back $50,000 or $25,000, that should be the limit on there as well. I don't think we should be able to have somebody loan their campaign $100,000, pay themselves back 50, and just get hit with 50,000. I don't agree with that part. It is, I mean, I heard what you said about trying to raise the money. It is hard, right? It's very hard, especially when you're running for the first time. It was very hard. Now, the first time I ran, I don't think anybody gives you money anyway. So it's very difficult. I think what Commissioner Martinez went through was impressive. I think he only raised $9,000 is what I remember. 5,000 of them were from one donor. I don't remember the name. So does it make it hard? Yes, it could. It will make it harder. But I also think that we have to be transparent with our things. And if this is what people are asking for, well, I think we should do something like this. If you don't like it, we'll change it in the future. I think that's been a comment in the past. I don't have anything else to say on this.
Commissioner Macias' plane just took off, so I do commend her. I think all of us commend her for logging in on the airplane before it taxied out to the runway. Mayor Cowan, do you have any comments?
Yes, Mayor Pro Temp. I think these are common sense items that are being proposed. I think the limits are very reasonable, and I don't think it puts running for elections out of reach for the general public. I think this is all about keeping special interests out of our elections. I think the majority of the large donors, other than friends and family, do donate to campaigns in anticipation for help down the road from that elected official. I sincerely believe that, and so I think by restricting that number, I think you minimize the undue influence of special interests in our elections and our city commission. I do think that's why campaigns are so expensive to run these days, is because there's so much money that comes into these elections, and it just snowballs. And that's why we have so many signs and push cards, and everyone has to keep up with the other person and try to outdo the next guy, right? So I think these limits are reasonable. I think in regards to Commissioner Cardenas' comment about the loan repayment, I think the idea is you don't want to have someone win and then all of a sudden a bunch of money comes in after the election, because now that person is the winner and can vote on contracts going forward. So, but I am open to adjusting that number, because I don't think that might be a too low of a number for repayment of your loan, but I think we can address that on the second reading if this passes.
Well, Mayor, I was actually doing the opposite. I was saying the loan payment is fine, but what you are allowed to loan yourself is too much. I think there should be a cap on that, and I don't see a cap on it, basically.
So amount on how much you can loan yourself to your campaign?
Yes.
You think that there should be a cap on that?
Well, I think if we have a cap on what you can pay yourself back, there should be a cap on what you can loan yourself. And I think it should be the same number.
Okay. I'm good. I'm good.
I have another comment, if I may. Just for understanding of the situation, I want to share with everyone, what's the percentage of people that come out and vote in Brownsville? About less than 8%. And the reason why I say that is because it costs money to run campaigns. And I can't use myself as an example, but people who don't know about local elections, they go after consultants. And I'll tell you, consultants can cost from $3,000 to $5,000 a month. You have block walkers that you want to reach the residents out there, because we have such a low voter turnout that the elections are being told by these handful of people. So it takes money to go out there, to buy your signs, to host parties, to do things like that. I went back 2023, 2019, and 2021. The average cost for a municipal election is around $50,000 to $60,000. So you're telling me that I have to go after 600 people just to raise the money that I need to run a campaign, when I should be focused on meeting with my constituents and getting my message out there? That's a disservice. And for first generation elected people who want to come out here and represent their residents, you're going to put this huge burden on them to be able to do that. And just like the public said earlier when they did public comment, we're limiting the pool now, and it's shrinking more and more and more. I'll clarify, I'm not opposed to this. I think there should be parameters, absolutely. We don't need a millionaire to come in here and try to buy the election. But we also shouldn't hold hostage the people who want to come out here and serve. And so what I'm asking is that we have a conversation about this first before we even decide tonight, because we have pieces of the puzzle. And by doing this today, I do not feel like I am representing the people of my district well enough to be able to make a vote tonight.
Mayor Pro Tem, with regard to the point, and it's a legitimate point, about limits at the federal level and congressional level. Congressmen also get paid $174,000 a year and have a budget of about $1.7 million for staff, office, everything, full-time job. That's apples and oranges. When we look at the state of Texas, though, judicial candidates, and because as a judge, you have cases from all walks of life that will come into your courtroom, and they want to eliminate that possibility of impropriety or conflict of interest with a judge who's ruling on a case. But for everything else, state senators, state rep, governor, attorney general, any position, there are no limits. Texas is a pro-business state. Texas is a very prosperous state. And part of it is because of the leadership that we have. To say that we should limit it goes contrary to all of that. And again, I think the amounts are wrong. For someone like me, especially, where if I want to set up a website to keep contact with my constituents, and I can tell you some of the things I put on there, as soon as it came out, the TANASCA audit, the full audit, I posted on my website. When city staff was not posting campaign finance reports in a timely manner, and reporters were crying out about it, I started putting my own finance reports on my website so the public had access to them. But guess what? That website costs. I pay every month for the website, for the web hosting, for the email address that's tied to it and everything. Now that's going to count against me because I'm working to diligently communicate with my constituents. But because this is a 2-year cycle, everything I've spent for the last year and going into next year's election is going to count against me. So it's resetting the rules for me. And also I've got the advantage of having a campaign treasurer appointment on file already, but my opponents or potential opponents don't. Commissioner Cardenas does because he's also in office. But somebody who might want to file next month or a month down the line, I have the opportunity right now to go raise a hell of a lot of money before this goes into effect. My opponents won't have that chance. That's placing people at a disadvantage. And I know that we've seen members of this commission who, knowing this was coming, have announced a fundraiser coming up where you're going to have tickets for $2,500 and $5,000. But anybody who runs against you in the future won't have that luxury. Because after we've raised the money ourselves, now we're changing the rules. It's wrong to do this while we're in an election cycle. It's wrong to do this without a full conversation of us as peers and colleagues and without better input from the public. And again, this meeting was moved up. This is not the time the public is usually here for public comment and to give input. It's not even 5 o'clock yet. We're changing the rules on so many levels, and doing it that way is fundamentally wrong. Based on that, this should be tabled today. We should schedule a workshop and we should talk about it as a group in public view.
Mr. Trevino, did you get a chance to look at campaign reports?
Yeah, so unfortunately, the campaign reports that are on the city's website only include the most recent reports from July of last year to January, and then of course those that have started their campaigns for the upcoming May. And looking at the numbers that we selected in comparison with the other cities, of course, the average that I saw on the campaign reports were about 300 to 500. That's usually what the general person gave. It was the companies that gave about 1,000. There was very few that were about 2,500. Couple of donations that were 5,000, but there were very few and far in between. And the companies that did give the 2,500 or a little less, 1,000, those are the normal companies that give to all campaigns, judges, county commissioners, council members. And that's the reason why we came up with the numbers we came up with.
Okay. So no further public comment. We've all had our comments. I'll entertain a motion.
Move to deny.
A second.
Motion and a second. All in favor of denying?
Aye.
Yes, so Commissioner Martinez?
Aye.
Aye, sorry.
Oh, okay. Commissioner Villarreal?
Wait, now you guys can.
The motion's to deny, so if you agree with denying it, vote yes, aye, or nay.
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 Aye.
Nay.
Nay.
We have 4 nays and 2 ayes.
So the motion fails.
The motion
the
fails.
vote passed. I will entertain another motion.
I'll make a motion to table the item.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor of tabling?
Aye.
Aye.
Nay.
Should talk about.
Nay. Nay.
Mayor?
Nay.
We have 4 nays.
That
So
does
that
not
also-
pass. Other motion?
I move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Nay.
Nay.
Everybody voted.
Okay, what's the count?
Commissioner Cardenas, you said aye.
Aye.
So we have 4 ayes, 2 nays.
Motion passes.
Next item.
Next is items for individual consideration. Action item number 1, consideration and action on resolution number 2024-547 to approve the presentation of the City of Brownsville's allocation of the Community Development Block Grant, CDBG, Home Investment Partnerships Program, HOME, and Emergency Solutions Grant, ESG, funded by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, for the 2024-2025 one-year action plan.
Good afternoon, Mayor, I'm Mayor Pro Tem, Commissioners. My name is Sandra Barba. I'm the Housing Manager at Grants and Community Development Office, and I will be presenting the annual action plan and proposed community development projects. CDBG is a program that provides our community with resources to address a wide range of community development needs, focused primarily in low and moderate income neighborhoods. Our annual action plan provides details on the grantees' use of HUD community development funds for the given year. To receive these funds, we must complete and submit a 5-year consolidation plan and an annual action plan. The city is currently in its 4th year of the 5-year consolidated plan. This year, HUD has awarded us an allocation of $2,584,488 for CDBG funding, $844,794.98 for home funding, $226,896 for emergency solution grants, a total allocation of $3,656,178.98. On this slide, we would like to highlight some of the 2023 program projects. Home funding was able to assist the Reyes family purchase their home with down payment assistance of $25,000. The Emergency Solutions Grants program awarded Good Neighbor Settlement House funding to operate their street outreach team. We invite you to go to the Good Neighbor website and read about the success story of Ms. Tamara, a former educator that became homeless and is now housed due to services provided by Good Neighbor. CDBG services funded Amigos del Valle. Amigos del Valle expensed $55,000. This funding allowed them to provide meals for over 80 seniors. This is approximately 10,000 meals. CDBG Capital Project funded the Brownsville Public Library Southmost branch. The branch benefited greatly from an addition to their makerspace equipment. The Community Voice campaign is an essential part of our citizen participation plan. The priorities shared by our community members is what develops our annual action plan. The campaign kicked off in November of 2023, and our department surveyed the community until May of 2024. We visited our local homeless shelters, such as Good Neighbor in Ozanam. We also participated in community outreach events. We circulated the survey via social media, as well as shared the survey with our different community partners and city departments. The survey was available in English and Spanish. The survey helps us ensure that the Brownsville residents actively engage in making recommendations for community improvements. The results of the survey are highly considered by our technical review committees. Additionally, we held our public comment period for the proposed projects from July 1st to August 2nd. We had 2 hearings at each public library. Listed, you will see the top priorities resulting from the survey. Our department received a total of 28 applications for the different grant programs, with over $8 million as an estimated amount requested. For CDBG projects, we proposed the following. As you can see, the amount awarded on your right and the different projects are rehabilitation, street improvements, sidewalk improvements, improvements for Olivia Park and Gonzalez Park. With a total of $1,795,591 for this slide. CDBG social services projects, we propose the following. As you can see, the breakdown of the amount awarded on your right, and the different projects are Tip of Texas, Parenting Program, Casa of Cameron and Willacy, Good Neighbor Settlement House for Mesa Llena Project, Moody Clinic for therapy services, Amigos del Valle for home delivered meals, Sunshine Haven for hospice care, and Come Dream, Come Build for housing, counseling. Sorry. The total for this slide is $272,000. For emergency solutions grants, you can see the breakdown on the right for the amounts awarded. And the different projects are Street Outreach, HMIS, Emergency Shelter, and Rapid Rehousing for Good Neighbor. HMIS is a health management information system. It is a database collection system specifically designed to support planning, management, and decision-making. The next area is Ozanam, HMIS funding, Rapid Rehousing, Emergency Shelter, and the breakdown on your right. Friendship of Women, funding for HMIS, Rapid Rehousing, and Emergency Shelter. For this slide, the total would be $226,896. For the home program, we propose the following projects. Brownsville Affordable Home Ownership, new construction with $332,000. Community Development Corporation of Brownsville for the Down Payment Assistance Program, $438,315.50 for a total of $844,794.98. In this slide, we have our timeline. We kicked off the comment period by publishing our public notice in the Brownsville Herald. This started our 30-day comment period, which started July 1st, ended August 2nd. As mentioned before, we held our 2 public hearings. Today, our office is requesting City Commission approval. When City Commission approval is received, our office will submit the annual action plan to HUD for approval by August 15th. Our office will wait for a HUD approval, which may take up to 45 days. And finally, when HUD approval is received, the projects will be funded and services will be provided.
So I would just add that one of the comments that we received throughout, I guess, this past year by various commissioners is the gaps in sidewalks. And so as you can see, there would be $1,000 that would go into sidewalk gap projects. Sometimes we see that, you know, people with disabilities can't make it to their mailbox, and we're saying, well, how this actually will specifically respond to that need that we're seeing.
This is an item for consideration and action. Any questions, feedback?
Thank you guys for the work you guys do, not just here, but it's very evident across the community. We see your all's work, and thank you for that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to echo that too. Thank you all for your work. We continue to see this grants department really come out here and help financially the not just the city, but organizations out there. I see so many organizations that provide free services sometimes to residents, and it's so important for us to be able to support them in every way we can. So thank you all for this, and I look forward to doing whatever I can to help you all.
Thank you.
I'll move to approve, Mayor.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next item.
Action item number 2, considerations and action on an amendment and third extension to the month-to-month contract between the City of Brownsville and Brownsville GMS, LTD GMS for commercial solid waste collection to increase rates by 25% and clarify services to be provided by GMS. Internal Services City Manager's Office.
Alan. Mr. Guard?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem and Commission. Next slide, please. So when we were previously discussing the upcoming RFP for solid waste and recycling, we were asked to reach out to GMS and speak with them about a rate increase. They have not had one since 2016. So we met with the representatives and they shared with us some data. And in our discussions, we talked about a proposed 25% rate increase. If they had simply had a 3% increase per year, like many contracts have, that they would have gotten 27%. The actual CPI since 2016 has been almost 60%, 57.8%. Since 2016, they shared with us their assets, and they showed us where they had invested in excess of $4 million in new trucks, garbage containers and dumpsters and things like that. And so in talking with them, we felt like the 25% was a number that everybody could work with. Next slide, please. So a current monthly rate for the pickup that most of their customer has is once per week. I believe it's a 5-yard. It is $146.70. That would 25% increase would make it $183.38. That's a little more than $9 per week. Below shows the next line shows the average new monthly revenue. So they would receive 141,000 of that monthly increase. PUB has a 3% billing fee. They would get about 7,000. And under the franchise agreement, the city of Brownsville would get about 49,000 per month. We talked with PUB. They need about 30 days to enact any programming changes for the billing. So we would recommend this take effect on their first bill in October. Next slide, please. One of the things I would add is I have reached out to representatives from GMS, and even though it's not part of the contract, they're willing to discuss what improvements they can make to the recycling drop-off place they have on Elizabeth. And so we would want to get some feedback from the commission and talk about what changes they would like to see down at that facility. So that's my presentation.
Thank you, Alan. Questions?
No question, but just a comment. And I know we've heard concerns from citizens before about the lack of services with regard to recycling. I do want to make sure it's on the record that GMS operates that at no charge to the city. And in fact, the city receives revenues from materials that get recycled there. So I just want to make sure that that's known, that this is not something that GMS is making a profit on at all in any way, shape, or form. They're doing that at the community's request. And I think feedback to them is important if we want to see improvement in that area.
So I think once we know what those services exactly are and we talk with them, we could use our communication department to disseminate that information to the public.
Thank you. That would be very helpful. No disrespect. I know they do it for free, but we do need to improve those services. Commissioner Cardenas, did you have a comment?
It says a franchise fee of $49,000. That isn't something that you all have already looked at for the budget, is it? You considered it in the budget, the $50,000?
Yes, we have considered every penny, Commissioner, every single penny.
All right, too late, thank you.
I will tell you, we actually discussed that in our discussions with them, but we have a precedent and we didn't want to change that precedent. So that's why we recommend leaving it in there.
Okay. Without any other comments?
Move to approve. I'll move to
Motion
approve.
Second.
Over here, second over here. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Next.
Next item, action item number 3, consideration and action to discuss a possible ad valorem tax rate increase and to authorize a public hearing on August. Please note, there's a typo. This is August 20th of 2024 to discuss the proposed ad valorem tax rate that will exceed the no new revenue tax rate. Financial Services Department.
Good afternoon, Honorable Pro Tem, Mayor, and Commissioners. On an annual basis, city is tasked as part of the budget process also calculate the ad valorem tax or the property tax. Part of that process is prescribed on the Texas Property Tax Code, Chapter 26, and it kind of dictates what process we need to do as part of truth in taxation. It starts off with the appraisal district certifying the tax rolls, working collaboratively with the county because there are tax assessors, collectors, getting some information. Continue collaboration for the purpose of completing a tax worksheet that was previously approved as a consent item. The whole purpose of that tax worksheet is to come up with two numbers. It's going to be the no new revenue rate and the voter approved rate. The no new revenue rate is the rate that will provide the same amount of revenue on properties taxed for both years. The voter approved rate is the maximum allowed by voters without a voter approval. The dead rate could increase as much as possible. So during our calculations, what we did is we, again, collaboration with the county, we came up with two rates. The first rate is no new revenue rates up on top left-hand corner is at 0.557153. That's a no new revenue rate. Towards the right-hand side, the current tax rate that we have is 0.607987. And the maximum rate that we could approve without triggering an election is 0.603504. Texas Constitution sets out the general requirements of truth in taxation. Truth in taxation states that the city is going to propose a tax rate that exceeds the lower of the new revenue rate or the voter approved rate. In this case, we're proposing a rate, the voter approved rate, which is above the new revenue tax rate. We are proposing tonight that the City Commission announce or authorize by vote that a public hearing will be held August 20th to discuss the possible tax rate increase that exceeds the no new revenue rate. You're not voting on the rate right now. We're gonna wait on the public hearing, but this is just to set the meeting.
Understood. Entertain a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lupe.
Board appointments. It's consideration and action on resolution number 2024-070-A to appoint, reappoint, and/or remove one regular member to the Planning and Zoning Commission, Planning and Redevelopment Department.
I'd make a motion to appoint Dr. Daniel Elkin.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes.
I'll let staff read it, then I'll make the motion.
Thank you. So it is now 5:08 PM. Mayor Pro Tem, would you like to make a motion to go into executive session?
I'll make the motion to move into executive session.
A second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. For the record, executive session number 1, closed session pursuant to Texas Government Code, Section 551.071, consultation with attorney including contemplated or pending litigation related to TVS Trucking and Oilfield Services LLC located at 6945 and 7015 Padre Island Highway, 2 Millwhite Inc., and 3 Mirage Aviation, Office of the City Attorney.